Is the Fed just going to print money?
That's literally what Congress has told us to do. There's enough cash in the financial system, and there is an infinite amount of cash at the Federal Reserve, an infinite amount of cash at the Federal Reserve, an infinite amount of cash.
No, you can't just print more money.
I saved the economy.
We're trillions of dollars in debt. The debt to GDP ratio is out of control. Who's going to pay for it?
Haha. Money printer go
And we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Unrekt Crew's Aussie Hexican meetup. Today we're going to be talking about Pulse and the Pulse chain. And there's a lot of information and there's a lot of confusion. So hopefully we're going to give you some more information to help confuse you. But first, I'd just like to introduce the other princess in here tonight is Sammy Chica. Welcome.
Hey, how you going?
Hey, Sammy. How you going? All right?
Yeah, good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm very good. Just trying to wrap my head around all the possible kind of plays and tactics that is going to happen with PulseChain. I might just start off just by trying to give a précis of everything that's going on, because I think that there are going to be some people in here who don't know exactly what's happening, and so I'm just going to go over it. So what Richard is doing is he's going to be forking Ethereum. Now, there have been other forks of Ethereum in the past where they have just taken the code and they've built their own versions of Ethereum. But this time, what Richard is doing is he's taking the whole system state pretty much. That means all of the ERC20s. So anybody who's got a token on the Ethereum chain will get a copy of it on the Pulse chain. Now, yes, and with the Ethereum, what he's going to do is he's going to copy that. That's going to turn it, whatever Ethereum you have in your Ethereum wallets, that's going to turn into Pulse. But it's going to turn into Pulse there's going to be a lot more. Well, he hasn't decided whether that's going to be a lot less like the Ethereum that gets copied over. If you have like one Ethereum, it'll be 0.00001 or whatever it is, like 10,000x Pulse. Or it might be that if you have one Ethereum, you'll have one Pulse, but there'll be 10,000 times more Pulse in existence than Ethereum. So that's kind of the 0.1 or the 0.01% of Pulse. Now, the way he's going to distribute the other 99.99% of Pulse is through a distribution phase. Now, that phase at the moment looks like it's going to be 30 days. And the way that works is that he's going to have addresses on a whole series of other chains like Bitcoin, Litecoin, and a whole variety of other chains. Plus, he's going to have an Ethereum address. And so there's going to be a whole lot of ERC20s and a whole lot of other coins that you're able to what he calls sacrifice. Now, the reason that it's being called a sacrifice is there's a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is that it's securities law. So he doesn't want to offer a security. And so what he's saying is that when you send these other coins to these other addresses to get this placeholder token, and the placeholder token is being called X, when you get that placeholder, to get that placeholder token, you're sacrificing, meaning that you're giving it without the expectation of work from others. And that's very important in terms of security law, because that's kind of what defines a security law. Now, there have been plenty of other ICOs and coin offerings in the past, and they haven't necessarily used that terminology. But the reason that Richard is using that terminology is because he wants to do it by the letter of the law. He's much more concerned, and he's wanting to make it really clear by the letter of the law that what he's offering is not a security. Therefore, it's being called a sacrifice. The other reason is for tax purposes, because if you suddenly get airdropped a token worth a whole lot of money, that's considered a capital gain, and you'll have to pay like capital gains tax on that. But if you're sacrificing towards a token and you're getting a token which is in the eyes of the law and is worth zero, then it's not a taxable event. Once that token increases in value and then it's realized back into fiat, then it becomes a capital gains taxable event. So it's because of securities law and because of tax law that he's calling it a sacrifice. And he also wants to make it clear that when you do give it over, you are not expecting any work from other people. That kind of empowers the community to take it on themselves to spread the word and to put into development on those tokens. So now the way that he's distributing those X tokens is going to be some sort of what's called a bonding curve. That means that if you put money in at the start of that period, you'll get more bang for your buck than if you put money in at the end of the period. Now, there's a couple of ways that people can play this. A lot of people in the Hex community are saying, buy Hex and sacrifice that, because they know that by sacrificing that Hex, it's going to diamond hands. It's going to hands that have no reason to sell the coins. So when you normally give your coins away into the market, you're actually putting the price down. But in this way, you're not putting any pressure on the price down because you're giving it to somebody who is going to hold them. And so a lot of Hexicans are buying up Hex, and we saw that already this morning. There was a big week up, and I think Hex at the moment is, let me just quickly check. It's just under 2 cents, just under 2 pennies, 2 cents US. So it was down at about 1.7 or something like that, and within the last 6 hours, it's jumped up to 2 cents. So that seems to be what's going to happen. Now, the game theory around this, let me see if I can just get back. Yeah. The game theory around this is that although it's going to be incentivized to sacrifice your coins, let's talk about Hex just for the moment. It's going to be incentivized to sacrifice your coins early as opposed to later in the process. Because people are sacrificing Hex into something that is not going to have a downward pressure on price, who knows what the prices will be in the future, but you can kind of imagine that price is going to increase over that time. And the sacrifice is going to be measured in terms of US dollars. And it's going to be probably measured for the average price over the half an hour that you've sacrificed it. So let's say Hex is worth 2 cents at the start of the period, and you sacrifice it, so you're getting more Hex than if you would have put it at the end of the price. But then if Hex moons, because everyone's sacrificing Hex for Pulse, that could send the price of Hex quite high towards the end of the period. So you may be better off sacrificing your Hex at the end of the period. And there's well, let's just stop there and I'll just quickly have a look at the comments. And do you have anything to say about any of that, Sammy?
Well, Richard wants to reward the people that are getting in sooner rather than later. So the people that are getting in at the sacrifice stage are ultimately going to be the winners because they'll be rewarded with those gains.
Sorry, I was just reading the comments then. And even though I am a guy and I can do two things at once sometimes, I wasn't listening to your comments. Sorry, can you just say that again?
All right, sweetie. Yeah, so Richard wants to reward early users. Like he doesn't care about the people who FOMO in, doesn't care about them. He wants to reward people who are getting in early. So the people that will be in the sacrifice stage will be the people that will be rewarded.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to go through some of these comments here to see if I can kind of address them. So Abracadabra asks, how can it be considered a sacrificing if you are setting a dollar amount with any type of distribution definitions or curve? I think Abra is that he's not setting any type of, I see what you're saying. So with the bonding curve, there's a number of ways you can do it. You can do it over time, so that let's say the first day is this much, and then the second day is this much, and then the third. So it's like a curve that goes down. Or you can do it like there's a week, and then it goes day by day by day. Or you can do any kind of shape in there. But the way that he has mentioned you could do is the first $1 million to sacrifice, they get it at a certain amount, and then it goes down and down. So I think Abra, you can still call it a sacrifice, because that $1 million is only referring to like the scale. It's only kind of how the scale is determined. Like if you do it by a dollar amount, the first million, and then the second million, it goes down a bit, etc. Or if you do it by time, or if you do it by a combination of those. The point is that when we are sacrificing those tokens, we are doing it as, and he mentioned this on stream, we're doing it as a political statement. What we're saying is that I believe in this project so much that I'm going to sacrifice these coins. So, yeah. And it gets like a little bit, I guess, tricky. Well, not tricky, but it gets kind of a little bit unclear in terms of the law. But what we have seen in the past is that even when things are considered a security, like Ethereum at first was considered a security, but then they came out and said that it was not a security because it had sufficient decentralization. And like you look at all of these projects where they are actually offering promises, but they're still not considered a security. Like the SEC hasn't gone after them. And then even when they are deemed a security, like EOS was deemed a security, in the end, all they did was pay a fine and everything was okay. And then when we saw, at the moment, XRP is being investigated by the SEC, but now they're talking about actually launching Ripple or XRP as an IPO, like on the stock exchange. So they might even just say, okay, yeah, we are a security. Now let's launch as an IPO. So so that's where all of that is. And like obviously I'm not a lawyer. I'm just some dude on the internet trying to make sense of all of this. So hopefully that. And let's say, Blaze with the game theory, words like sacrifice and give over my coins is not working for me without a very detailed explanation. Yeah, true. You shouldn't do anything like sacrificing your coins unless you really want to do that after having more details. And we definitely have a lack of details right at the moment. We have a kind of general sense of what he's going to do, and we can see the things that he's talked about, but the final details of everything have not come out. So we don't know what that bonding curve is going to be. We don't know exactly, like we haven't seen a white paper of the Pulse chain and how they are going to secure the network. There's many, many aspects that we don't know yet. And I would imagine that all of that stuff, though, will have to be nailed down and released before we enter into any sacrificing period. But yeah, Zar, I would not sacrifice anything until you're really sure that you want to do that. And like, even with Hex, my whole thing has been, I've never tried to sell Hex. What I've always tried to do is just present information, just give information to people so that they can make up their own minds. Because, like, it doesn't need to be sold. If people understand the information, that should be enough to sell it in itself. And it's really important that everybody understands what they're putting their money into, for me anyway.
Hey, Bluebum.
Yeah.
Brian Corbin just put a comment up. He said, can you explain again why it's beneficial to use Hex as a sacrifice as opposed to another ERC20?
Oh, there are the other ERC20s will be able you'll be able to use. There's a whole list of coins. Some are on other chains and some are ERC20s, and you'll be able to sacrifice any of those as well. So it's not just Hex. And in terms of the other coins, like if you're holding any of the other coins, it's probably like there probably won't be. You're probably not giving in to sell pressure on those coins either. Like Richard doesn't sell. It's just he's got enough and he doesn't need to sell. So, like if you've got Litecoin and you want to sacrifice that, it's probably not going to be. It'll be the same thing as with Hex. You'll be pumping the Litecoin bags as well because you'll be giving it into hands that are probably not going to sell. Well, my guess is that what he'll do with all of these other coins that people have sacrificed is that he'll set up bridges, like he'll set up liquidity bridges, and he'll use that money, or he could use that money to fund those liquidity bridges. So, for instance, there are all sorts of cross-chain swaps happening on different platforms at the moment. But in order to have a cross-chain swap, you need both sides in order to provide the liquidity for that cross-chain swap. And also, these cross-chain swaps, or bridges as they're called, bridges not necessarily a very good analogy because it's not necessarily called a bridge. It's not necessarily a bridge. It's more like you have two post offices. So let's take ETH and Hex. On the ETH side, you'll have somebody set up a Uniswap front end, and what they'll do is they'll get a whole lot of wrapped Pulse, and they'll put that on the side of the Uniswap, and then people will be able to swap between ETH and wrapped Pulse on the Ethereum side. But then on the Pulse side, you'll have a similar post office where people will be able to swap wrapped ETH with Pulse. Yeah.
Can I also add that, like as Hexy Babe said, the benefit, if you're going to buy Hex to sacrifice, you're going to push the price of Hex up, which is good. But not only that, you're going to get, if you buy Hex now for the sacrifice stage, you're going to get double your coins, that mirrored image on both chains. So that's also another benefit.
Well, that's the other thing with the game theory. Like if you're sitting on a whole big bag of Hex right now, and you know that there's going to be a 30-day distribution phase, and there's more of an incentive to put that in at the start, but you kind of think, oh, maybe the Hex price will moon towards the end of that stage. You could always like maybe do part of your Hex at the start and just leave it to see if the price of Hex pumps. And if the price of Hex pumps at the end, like you've got the choice to put it in, the sacrifice it then, and then you'll have a greater USD value, greater USD value of that, so you'll get more Pulse. Or if it doesn't do that, you could just say, well, I'll leave it, and when the fork happens, all of those Hex that you have on that Ethereum chain will be duplicated in the Pulse chain. And so you've kind of doubled your bags anyway. We don't know if it'll be double the value or not, because all of these things have to have a price discovery once the fork has happened. The other thing that he talked about was that At the moment, the way he's talking about it, if he does, it's 1 Ethereum to 1 Pulse, but he has 10,000 more Pulse. There's a whole lot of, and also all of the Uniswap liquidity pools are coming over as well. Now, at the moment, all of those Uniswap liquidity pools, they have a price of ETH to an ERC20, let's say, right? Let's say it's 1 ETH buys you, 200 Chainlink, right? But then once the fork happens, because it's the same ratio, but we have heaps more Pulse, the first person to jump into that liquidity pool can basically buy up that whole liquidity pool of the Pulse Chainlink side, right? And let's say there's $1 million of liquidity at 10,000x. You can buy $1 million worth of Chainlink for like $100, but it'll be Pulse Chainlink. So there's going to be a whole lot of ERC20s which won't work on the Pulse side because they have administration keys or this or that. Maybe those people with the administration keys decide to not honor the Pulse side of those coins, so they could be worthless. But you could have all of these other ERC20 projects which would be worth a half or 5% or equal. We really don't know. It really depends on the utility of the actual ERC20 and whether it has a utility on the Pulse side. So, yeah.
Hey, Blue Bum. So if I am gonna buy Hex for my sacrifice, and so how does that work? Am I losing those coins out of my wallet? And won't that, in regards to getting the copy on both chains, does it mean those coins have gone, or are you still entitled to get a copy? How will that work?
If you're sacrificing, that means you won't get a copy of those ERC20s on the Pulse side. Like if you have Hex and you decide to sacrifice it towards the Pulse project, that Hex is gone. You've sacrificed it. But what it will give you is a certain amount of Pulse, right? So you won't have the copy of that Hex on the Pulse side, but you will have a whole bunch of Pulse. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
So there's like stacks of questions. I'm just going to try to go through. Do you mean you'll be a custodian over my coins and you now have the P keys?
Yeah, that's a good one, because that's the thing. If you're buying Hex and you sacrifice that you didn't get the copy, that is the third party, really. I mean, who do you trust in crypto?
That's true. Those sacrifice coins won't be going to a contract. They will be going just to an Excel spreadsheet. And so, yes, you are trusting that the people who take the Pulse, who take all of those sacrifices, will distribute that Pulse. That is definitely a point of trust, yes, as far as I see it. And remember, guys, I'm just speaking from what I understand. You really need to, do your own research and ask other people, listen to other streams and stuff like that. So I'm just going to keep going through these. Perhaps it is time not to let greed just decide every move you make. Yeah, Zappa, true. I mean, I don't think that, there's a whole series of things that go into any decision making. And I think being honest about your greed is also probably good. Be really honest with yourself. Am I just being greedy, or am I playing this in a sensible way, or am I completely FOMOing and obviously with crypto and any investment, you should not risk more than you can afford to lose, is obviously a good rule.
Hey, Blue Bum, can I clarify something with you? I mean, I'm pretty sure it's correct, but just want to get your opinion. So I've got my Hex Eth, and I've got my Hex Pulse staked, right? It's 12 months away, and I go to unstake my 100,000 Hex on Pulse. I get that. Now I can still go back to the ETH chain and pay my ridiculous gas fee, and also unstake the ETH Hex as well. Can't I? It's not going to be one transaction. It's two totally different things, right?
Yeah, the Hex contract is immutable and will always live on Ethereum. So you'll always have those stakes, and it's going to be like interesting to see how the prices affect each other. Like I'm imagining, like when I used Matic and went over to QuickSwap, I started swapping so much more than I have on the ETH side, because every time I do anything on the ETH side, I really think about what I'm going to do in terms of, am I swapping this for this, because it's costing me a lot each time. And if I make mistakes, like there's no way I'm making a stake for 1 month or 3 months or anything like that, even if I know that I'm probably just going to hold those coins for that time. It's because it costs so much more. But like when I was using QuickSwap, I was like I wouldn't even think about it because it was so quick. They have the same 3-second blocks, and it was so cheap. Like it was literally fractions of a cent to make a swap. So I just didn't even think about it, and I just made way more swaps. So my guess is that we're going to see a hell of a lot of trading on the Pulse side, because people will just do it on their whim. They'll just do it. They won't have to. There's no cost to them transacting. Not no cost, but virtually no cost. So I think we're going to see an explosion of activity on that Pulse side, especially because at the moment, like, this information is mainly in the Hex community, and it hasn't gone out. Like, there's so many people who are holding ERC20s who don't know this is going to be happening. Now, at some stage, they're going to start learning, and as they learn that they've got all these free all of these free tokens on this other chain, then they're going to go to that chain, and it's going to be so easy to go to that chain, because all they do is they go up into their MetaMask. There's a drop-down menu, and you change from the Ethereum network to the Pulse network, and then all of a sudden, magically, they have all these tokens on that network. So then some of them will be just like swapping them out as quickly as possible, like just dumping them down so they can get whatever money they're worth. Other people will just leave them. Other people will start trying to trade them. But there's going to be I think there's going to be a discovery. And the thing is, that's a huge amount of people who have all of those. And it was like, one of the things that was mentioned in stream yesterday was that Binance Chain, BSC, now has more users on it than Ethereum. Like, it wasn't very long ago that one launched. And I don't know how big an advertising campaign they did. Obviously, they would have advertised on CoinMarketCap and through their communities. But that got for that to get such massive traction in such a short period of time, I think is due to it being cheap and fast. Like, the user experience is huge. And the user experience on Ethereum at the moment is terrible. And so, like, I think on the Pulse, like on the Hex side of Pulse, for instance, on the Pulse Hex, for instance, we're going to be seeing people stake for 1 month, 3 months, 1 week. Like, why wouldn't you? Like, if you think, I'm just going to hold these for a couple of weeks and see what happens, you'll go, yeah, I'll stake it for a couple of weeks and I'll earn a bit of interest. If you've got no concern about how much it costs to start a stake or end a stake, you're just going to do it. So I think we're going to see a lot more stakes happening, a lot more shorter term stakes happening, and just a lot more activity in general. And I think that, like, once the word gets out that people have all these other tokens on this other chain, there's going to be all sorts of like trading that's going to go on. Okay, so can you explain what's the beneficial to use Hex as a sacrifice as opposed to another ERC20? Yeah, I think I kind of answered that. it's not necessarily going to be beneficial, except if you hold a lot of hex, then it's probably going to pump your hex bags. But if you hold a whole lot of Chainlink, it's also going to, and you want to, sacrifice Chainlink, it's probably, and you've got other Chainlink bags, it's probably the same thing is going to happen. I don't think he's going to sell. Richard seems to have a bit of I don't know, like he was crying when he knew that Bitcoin was going to go down, but he just said he couldn't sell his coins, and because he's emotionally attached to them. And he's someone who's sitting on incredible wealth, so he has no need to sell anything. And I think he's just going to keep them all and perhaps use them as liquidity. The question of why you could sell a token. I'm just trying to find any other questions.
Well, there's some good questions. Someone was asking, where does the sacrifice go?
Yeah, the sacrifice. Look, in terms of like the actuality, like probably the sacrifice is going towards collecting Pulse, but how he's stating it is that it's just a sacrifice so that it complies with securities law and tax law.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
And he's a very smart man, he's making it easier for us too, building all these bridges and doing it the smart way, so we're not up for all this paying tax and, these other things that are involved.
So at some point later in time, you can get your real ETH back, or are they wanting to just give them your ETH for the version? I'm not exactly sure what that means. Sorry, ZAR15. If you sacrifice something, it gets sacrificed. If you hold ETH, you'll get Pulse, but you'll get it at such a low ratio that it's like, the one thing about this is before the fork, I would advise anyone who's providing liquidity to pull that liquidity, and anyone who's holding ETH to swap it into something else, because you're not going to get much value for holding ETH over the fork. Oh yeah, that's interesting. I'm going 60, 20, 20, 10 on Pulse. I'm not sure what that means, BMA. Snapshot up, no Zappa. When people use the term snapshot, it's actually kind of an incorrect usage of the term. It's a fork, but people sometimes call the fork a snapshot, but it's a fork. I guess makes sacrifice purpose to hold my original hex bags. Yeah, that might be a good way to play it.
And I think the best way to go about this is, and a lot of people wanted to go back in time and buy more hex, but now we've got Pulse. I think if you don't sacrifice enough at the start, you're not going to get the upper hand. Like, Richard's not going to reward the FOMOers. If you get in early and sacrifice those coins, that's where you're going to make the money. You got to decide then, and get.
That's what I was saying before. That's not necessarily the case, because if the price of hex moons over that time period, you might have been better off putting it at the end of the period, even though you get less of a ratio, because the US dollar value is worth so much more by the end. It really depends on the price of hex in US dollars. So this has been a really tricky one for a lot of people. What do you foresee happening with stablecoins? Do you think they'll find a market value? So USDC and US dollar Tether, USDT, they are both stable coins and also DAI. At the moment, let's talk about the USDC or the USDT. If you hold either of those tokens, their value is $1. But the people who run those have administration keys. And if they don't like you for any reason, like or the government tells them to, or whatever, they can just basically nuke your whole account. That will happen on the Pulse side as well, potentially. So if you hold USDC, Pulse USDC, they will also be able to nuke that. Now, the USD, these stable coins, they're coming over with a whole lot of their pairs. And so while we think, oh, it's USDC, they can't just double the supply, what they're just doing is they're doubling the representation of the supply. So the same with all of these other ERC20s. It really depends on what their value finds on the other chain. Now, if everybody, and that's where it really comes down to social consensus. If everybody believes that the USDC on the Pulse side is worth $1, then it will trade at $1. If people thinks, no, it's just a shit coin, I'm just going to dump it down, maybe it dumps down to zero. Or maybe some people believe it holds the value of $1 and some people feel that it holds zero value. Then it will trade at around 50 cents if it's directly half-half. So, and yes, like the USDC or they can, the people who run that, they can make a statement saying we're not honoring any of these. And oh, cool, we got OG coming in. I was gonna everyone OG43. It's a rare appearance at the moment because he's dealing with newborn child. But everyone, yeah, like really great to see him. Hey,
Hey,
How you going, guys? I'm not sure if you can hear me or not.
yeah, we can hear. Good to see you. How are you?
Very, very well. You've got some good viewership here. 38 people watching, I could see. That was an epic stream yesterday, Sammy. Well done. That was fantastic.
Thanks for watching. It was a lot of fun.
I wanted to jump on the stream last night because I had like an hour or two free, but I thought I'd just quickly, I'm not going to be able to stay long, but I thought I'd quickly jump on and just ask a couple of questions. Maybe we can, chew the fat, so to speak. So what, I mean, you can't really recap what you've been talking about for the last 40 minutes, but what are we up to?
Well, we're just talking about stablecoins. So
right,
I can hear myself echo.
Same.
Can you? Is that me? Hang on. Let me just see if I... What about now?
Yep, that's good. We can hear you now. Just speak a bit loudly. Project your voice a little bit.
Okay. There we go.
So we were just talking, Blaze was just asking about your like stable coins and how they, like what kind of value they will have on the other chain. I think there's going to be a lot of confusion. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see them trade below $1 or below what their stated value is.
They're not fungible. They are not fungible tokens with the original ERC version, ERC20 version.
Well,
that's an important thing to remember. They're not.
No, but yeah. But if he provides like liquidity pairs for both of them, then there will be. Like you could put a Pulse USDC, a wrapped Pulse USDC on the Ethereum chain that trades against USDC, and you could have a wrapped Ethereum USDC on the Pulse chain. And so on both sides, you could see trading in between those two coins. You can also see...
You would have to have huge amount of liquidity like put up for that, like a huge amount of liquidity, and the liquidity provider is going to see a hell of a lot of impermanent loss because everyone's just going to be cashing out of the other side of it. So it doesn't, like, to me, doesn't make a whole lot of sense like that will happen that way. I could be wrong though. I've been known to be wrong many times, as my wife likes to remind me. Yeah, look, I think it's yet to be seen how that's going to play out. I'm less interested in all of that sort of stuff. I'm more interested in just the game mechanics of the launch phase at the moment. So when you get a copy of the ERC20 token on the Pulse chain, I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, yesterday, did I hear Richard say that there's going to be a time frame that you need to claim them within? Otherwise you lose them?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was something like
So
30 days. Yeah.
So let's drill down into this. Like, what exactly are we talking about? If you don't claim the tokens that you have on the Pulse side, let's say you've got like some ERC20 tokens on Ethereum, you're going to get a copy of them on the Pulse side. Now, am I understanding correctly that you might lose them if you don't claim them within a certain period?
I don't think that's how it works. I didn't hear him talk about that, so I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to. But from what I understand, if it's a fork, then they're all copied over. Then there's no time limit, and that wouldn't work because there are people who set and forget, and there's people who have bought Hex and staked it for, like 10 years out and don't know what's happening. And you don't want those people coming back in 10 years and realizing that their ETH Hex is worth nothing and they could have claimed the Pulse Hex, but
they
just
don't. That staked Hex would not qualify in this scenario anyway because it's staked Hex. It's not actual.
It's the same with Liquid.
Yeah, but you could. So my understanding was that you need to do something to. Yeah, look, I maybe I misunderstood. It was a long stream, and I have to say, like yesterday morning, I was up from 4 o'clock in the morning. So when the stream started, I was already tired, and I think in the first hour of the stream, I dozed off for like about 20 minutes to half an hour. So I feel like I can't watch the whole thing again, but I feel like I missed out on a chunk of it. But I did hear him mention this thing about the freemium, like, because he did say the freemium coins are not going to be freemium forever. It's like there's a period of time where they're not going to be freemium.
I think he
So
means
what was he talking about?
days. I think he means that 30 days.
But what's the freemium in that 30 days?
Well, maybe, when he drops all these ERC20 coins and you can basically go on the Pulse chain and get your version of those, you've got 30 days to claim them. Otherwise, you won't be able to claim them. Do you reckon it'd be that?
It could be. I mean, he's talked a lot about, I've heard him say it multiple times, that he doesn't want to reward people so that they can just dump on everyone's heads. Like, he's got no interest in doing that. So he wants people to be active, like active users of the chain. So if you're not an active user of the chain, maybe there's going to be some sort of penalty there.
I think he was just referring to like a couple of big whale accounts on the in Ethereum. Like,
we're so lucky we have Crypto Vince, who goes through and timestamps those things. So we should be able to go through those timestamps and find out exactly when he's talking about this sort of stuff, because it was something that rang a bell in my mind. I'm like, oh, what's he referring to here? This is not something that is, it's not something that's clear to me right now.
what's not clear to you?
That whole freemium thing. What he was talking about, freemium.
Yeah, basically,
and
like
how he's not going to the freemium's not going to be forever. It's not going to be rewarded forever. So people.
Clairvoyant's comment, believe him. I think she or he's hit it on the head. If you want to pop the comment up. So Richard was referring to claiming for free. Pure, you get airdropped for holding ETH. If after 30 days you don't claim your free airdrop Pulse, it goes away.
Hang on. So sorry.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So
he's talking to the Pulse that you get for having ETH.
Yeah. I thought, but I don't know. I thought that, we'll have to suss out those details.
So maybe it's just the Pulse. Maybe it's just that Pulse that you get for ETH. Maybe it's just that this refers to. As I said, I'd sort of passed out for like 20 minutes to half an hour, and I feel like I missed something in the discussion. But yeah, that sounds legit. It could be that, because it doesn't make sense that you do that for all the ERC20 tokens. And that's what I was trying to understand. But if that's the case with the ETH and the Pulse that you'd claim, yeah, that sort of makes sense, because ETH is the native token and Pulse is going to be the native token. So maybe you can treat that differently than the ERC20, copies that you get.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I didn't hear that. I don't see how you can put a time limit on that. But obviously, people are saying that he literally
You
said
can
if
do
you
whatever you like, mate. You can
move it
make
to
the
another wallet.
rules. You can make the rules,
To an
Bluebum.
extent.
You're doing your own. No,
To an
you can make the
extent.
rules. You can make the rules, mate. You can do what you like. It's code. You can,
But how
if
do
you're
you put it?
willing to do it.
I don't understand how you would put a time limit on it, because it's already all there. When the fork happens, you don't have to do anything. It's all there. Like you
Yeah,
just change the network and it's all there.
I'm sure. Look, I'm sure it's all possible, but it's just a matter of whether it's worthwhile doing or not. It
Mm.
might be too hard. But with the native token, and I think a few people have come up and identified what that was. It's referring to the Pulse.
Yeah, okay, maybe if the ETH for Pulse. I mean, it's just another reason not to hold ETH at the time of the fork. So it doesn't make sense to hold, like, even if you do want to hold onto your ETH, you might just want to swap it to an ERC20, have the fork happen, and then swap it back to Ethereum if you really want to hold Ethereum. But yeah, there's no reason to really like hold ETH at the time of the fork. And therefore, if you're providing liquidity, don't do that, because half of it will be ETH, unless you're providing liquidity into something else. But then again, it's like you don't know what's going to happen on the Pulse side. So I wonder whether liquidity will be pulled from a whole lot of these pools just before the fork.
Hey, there's so much to consider.
Yeah.
It's far more complex than the Hex launch, hey?
For
Like
Yeah.
there's
sure.
just so many more moving parts.
Absolutely.
And it's so many more moving parts. And it's sort of really, really difficult. Like, this it seems to be a little bit of an attempt to like get everyone to do like some sort of thing, or not that it's a bad idea, like buy a hex and do this or whatever. Not necessarily a bad idea, but anytime you get a whole group of people doing one thing, there's going to be someone on the other side who's going to profit from that, by not doing that thing. So I think that's always
Well,
worth bearing in
that's
mind.
why I wanted to mention, like, if Hexicans are saying, like, let's FOMO in on day one because we get the most in terms of that sacrifice, but then you're not thinking what happens at the end of that 30-day period. Like, the price of Hex might moon in terms of US dollars by then, and so you actually would have been better off getting in at the end of the period rather than at the start of the period, because it depends upon the Hex USD price as well as the bonding curve that he's incentivizing.
Gee, but Hex would have to do a 3.3x from day one to the last day.
Yeah, but it doesn't take much.
No, just to break even on that equation. Just to break even.
Yes, but it doesn't take much to move it. And you think about it, if everyone's like all of a sudden sacrificing their Hex, or if they want to, like, if they're holding Ethereum, buying Hex with it and then sacrificing that because it's better for the Hex price, like, and there's this big kind of public push by Hexicans to do that, then it could moon over that 30-day period very easily, because it doesn't take much economic energy to move the Hex price. And like already in the last 6 hours, we've seen it go up, like, what was it, like 15% or something like that.
Yeah, I saw that. That's crazy, hey? That's crazy.
Yeah.
It dropped down to 1.4 cents, maybe even 1.3 cents, or maybe 1.4. It dropped down to that, like, it was there like a couple of days ago.
There are so many ways to play this. There are going to be so many ways to play this. And like, I think
if you try and game the system, like, you look, there were people who picked like day, picked from day like 20 through to day 50 and just put in all of their dough in those days of the Hex launch phase. And that's to some extent, maybe they're geniuses, or maybe they were just like, that's when the opportunity was there for them to put that money in, So I think to some extent, if you dollar cost average in, that's going to be a safe sort of approach. It usually is. It's usually a safe approach to dollar cost average in, but who knows what's going to happen? Who knows what's going to happen?
That's the thing. And yeah, I mean, what I notice is like things always pump before we think they're going to. It's like it's because everyone's just front running everybody, and so let's say like now everyone thinks that the price of Hex is going to pump towards the end of that period because everyone's just sacrificing their things. So, like, yeah, I don't know that. I mean,
so.
And then does that mean that the price right after the fork just dumps on the ETH side because it's gone up so much and now everyone's got the fork? They're just kind of like selling at this really inflated level and buying on the Pulse side.
So the question is, what is the benefit of just having Pulse? There's not, to me, it doesn't seem like just having Pulse. What you're betting on, what you're betting on is that the whole ecosystem is going to be working. That's what we're betting on. We're not betting on just Pulse and just hoping that the rest of it, just falls into place by itself. We, as participants on this new chain, we're going to need to really go in and make sure that there's movement on all these other ERC20 tokens, the good ones. The shit ones can just die, right?
And that's the trick. That's the trick. It's like if we do play it like that and we go, okay, I'm going to grab as much Pulse as I can, and then I'm going to jump into these liquidity pools after the fork and try to pick up as many of the Pulse side of these whatever things, Aave, Curve, Chainlink. We've got to work out which are the ones that we think will hold value on the Pulse side, and that's really difficult. Because we've all been so full on that it's all Hex and the Hex is the best and the rest is all shit. But like, if you wanted to play it like that, it's not the like dumbest idea. But like, I'd be very careful about any of that. Like, you might buy a whole lot of this PRC20. Like, you might buy a whole lot of Curve that's because it's 10,000 times less of a cost on the Pulse side, but then nobody uses it. Like, I don't know.
But Blue Bum, you got the time and you're going to do all the research, mate, and come back to us with all the answers. We want to know who's got admin keys, what's likely to rug pull, and yeah.
Well, you would think that Richard has kind of hinted towards the ones that are good because he's given us a list of what he's accepting.
Yeah.
Right. So I would start off by looking into those and thinking about what kind of value they will accrue on the Pulse side, like whether it will make much of a difference whether they're ETH Pulse or Hex Pulse.
The ones that have been hurt by the increase to the S load on the ETH side, they are going to be more likely to want to go across and claim. What's this? It's so simple.
Have all three. So have Pulse, Hex, and Hex, like yes, Hex on both sides, and then Pulse. Yeah, maybe. I mean, that's the thing as well, is if you decide not to play all of this and you just decide to hold your Hex, you're still going to double your Hex. Like, that's kind of like a safe way to play it. Like, and then whatever your Hex is worth, you can sell, or if you think the price is high enough, or you can just stake it, or you can sell it and move it to the other side and stake it there.
Yeah.
Sammy, yesterday you asked you asked Richard. I was laughing so hard when you asked him this. You're like, how much should I invest? Like $10,000.
Well, I was sort of asking for people who like don't have a lot of money or dry powder. Like a lot of us just went all bang in on Hex, and I know some of the bigger boys are thinking about putting like 50 grand plus in. So, you know, I wanted to sort of ask for the people who don't have a lot of splash hanging around, like what would be, you know, if you want to be a whale, what sort of, you know, money you'd be looking at.
I think you should
I
talk about
think
it in
generally
terms of,
speaking, it's that golden rule of whatever you're willing to lose.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
Whatever you're willing to lose, yeah.
I
you know?
agree. I agree with you. But
And
yeah,
I think there's a lot of potential.
maybe think of it in terms of percentages rather than amounts. You know, like with $10,000, you're not going to be a whale of anything, realistically, unless you do an incredibly smart play, like you swap it all for Pulse, and then you get into the liquidity provider right after the fork. You're the first one in there. You buy up everything of a coin. Like if you're going to try to do that, that's probably if you want to be a whale with $10,000, maybe that's how you do it. But there's a lot of risks to that tactic. Like, how do you become the first person in? And like, you've also got to really got to know what you're doing. You know, I mean, it shouldn't be
So
that.
that's going to be but isn't that going to be the, like, how can they stop that from happening? They can't really stop that from happening, can they?
Well, what
Like,
he was talking about yesterday was everything gets swapped over 1 for 1, except ETH gets swapped at 10,000x less. So rather than and then Pulse has the same amount of coins as Ethereum. That's another way to do it, and that will keep those ratios intact.
Oh, so he's not 100% on the 10,000x more Pulse.
He knows that's the
circulating
ratio.
supply.
He knows that's the ratio he wants, but he hasn't decided whether it's 1 for 1 ETH and then there's 10,000 more Pulse, or 10,000x more Pulse, or if you get 10,000x less Pulse for your ETH.
Gotcha. So like 0.00001 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like 0.00001 Pulse.
I mean, in terms of
per ETH. Is that like, it's either that or 1 for 1, but then there's 10,000 more circulating supply. But
and that's better in terms of unit bias, because that means that, like, there's no doubt that people, especially no coiners or newbies, when they come onto exchanges or whatever, they look at the actual price of the token. They don't look at the market cap. They go, oh, that token's only 1 cent. That's cheap. I'll buy that. That one's $100. No, that's too expensive. So the unit bias is definitely a real effect. And it also means that if you have that kind of unit bias, the multiples can really quickly add up. Like, to move from 1 cent to 10 cents is like super quick, as opposed moving from $10,000 to $100,000.
I like 0.000.00001.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that better. I like that better because, watching that 0.00001 move up, it just seems like you want to get to that 1 cent mark, or that 0.01, not 1 cent mark, that 0.01 mark. It just seems like you want to get to that full, you're working towards that. I like less supply. I mean, it's the same thing. It's the same thing, but I like less supply.
Hey, I still reckon it'd be a good idea to just chuck $1 in every one. Like, if you're looking at 0.00001, like, you're still, even for $1, going to get heaps. You know what I'm saying? Or roughly the idea of putting a little bit of money into a lot of them, or putting more money in the top 20, rather. But yeah.
So you get an airdrop on the other side.
No, this is all the ERC, the Pulse ERC 20 coins.
You reckon? You reckon that's the move? I
Well,
sort of reckon that you're probably just better off going in with the Pulse and then buying up what you can with the Pulse. I feel like you're going to get a better because what you're doing, right, is you're essentially when you're buying it on the ETH side, to get the other side, like you're spending like the full price of that token to get it on the other side, right?
yeah.
Whereas if you do with Pulse, it's like 10,000 X better off when you're buying it on the Pulse side. So it just seems like, yeah, I don't know, maybe that's wrong. Just seems like that's the right way to go. Like I don't like, if you're buying now now's the top, right? It's the top. And if you're coming from fiat, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the play is exactly. That was like one of the questions that I had for you to ask him. I'm not even sure if it got asked. Might have been while I was.
It was sort of like we only really had time, and of course, Richard had a lot to say as well. So I tried to copy, and like I had a lot of stuff that I got from the Hexicans that I did ask. I'm sorry if I didn't get all of it. But yeah, as I said, I was just saying to Blue Bum, that stream was organised 2 months ago, right? So he was coming on Ladies Discourse just for the Friday night hangout. It just so happened that the Pulse information was coming out, and I think a lot of Hexicans wanted to hear more about that. But unfortunately, Richard was with us we wanted to have, meet him and talk about other stuff as well, because it was our opportunity to meet him. As you guys know, you don't often get a opportunity to stream with him and ask him questions. So, it was sort of in that light more than Pulse. And I mean, I think it's only the sacrifice information that's coming out anyway. There's still so much more involved. And I'm sure when Richard's ready, he'll drop it. He'll stream.
Absolutely. And all of you guys did a great job yesterday, but I thought Blaze was asking some fantastic questions as well.
Yeah, for sure. She's always it's always great to talk to, Blaze. She's very clever lady, and she really found that space with Richard and got him into that zone where she could ask him some really decent questions. So it was quite entertaining, and she's definitely one of the more confident Hex chicks, which I love. I think it's great.
So Brian's just asked, like, how he wonders how staked Hex will be copied. That's actually one of the easiest things, like, to do. It's literally just you just copy all of the Hex stakes, and they're like the Hex coins and everything like that. It's just a copy paste kind of thing, Brian. And yeah, I'm sorry, people, if there are questions or things that I've missed. I'm just trying to kind of like get what's kind of good to talk about, or if there's anyone who's not sure about something and wants to ask a question, just ask it again, and we'll try to get to it.
Whatever the state is of the contract, at the block number that it's forked, that exact state will be replicated on the Pulse side. So how the Hex will be copied across in the same way that everything else is copied across, it will just be replicated on the Pulse side at a certain block height.
Yeah. Yeah.
Guys, I just I've got some stuff I need to go do some shopping, so I thought I'd jump on quickly, but I'm gonna have to love you and leave you.
Thanks, man.
Good
Thanks
to
for coming
see
on.
ya.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy.
See you later.
See ya.
So let's maybe just have a little talk about, like, what projects would be kind of valuable on the Pulse side. Like, what other DeFi products? Like, maybe we could look at users, how many users each project has. That might be a way to determine. Maybe even look at how many transactions they had before the fees went up. Like there might be all this, like when we saw everyone jump onto Binance, it was like there was all this pent up energy of people wanting to trade and degen. And because they couldn't really do it on ETH because it was so expensive, it just exploded on the Binance chain. So maybe looking at projects where people were using it a lot before the price went up. So looking at those projects. It surprised me that he talked about like the yield farming as well, and they're setting up some sort of yield farming, because I think if it's the same as it was on QuickSwap, that means him giving away Pulse tokens as incentives into pools, so people are like get incentivized to provide into the pools. And it definitely worked on the QuickSwap side. Like I was cashing out my payment every day and putting it back into the pool so that because that's how you kind of can compound your interest. And so it's definitely something that's very attractive to people. I mean, I don't know if that means that he has to set aside an amount of Pulse to give as rewards, like to incentivize these yield farms.
That will be interesting as well, and I think there'll be a lot of game theory around it. I mean, if you take a look around the crypto space now and have a look at the yield farming returns, people are making some really crazy money out there. And Richard, being as smart as he is, I think he sees this as a really good play, and I think there'll be a lot more information coming out once that's done. Brian Corbin put in a good question. He says, because staked hex coins are burned, right, then we're issued T-shares to represent how much hex we get at end stake. So are they burned, Blue Bum?
Yeah, they are essentially. They like when you stake hex, you're burning it, and in replacement, you're getting T-shares, and those T-shares represent an accrual of value. And at the end of your stake, you can mint hex from those T-shares. Yeah, and that's going to be the same on the Pulse chain.
Well, yeah, the Pulse chain. They'll be burning, I believe, was it 25% of the gas fees?
Yeah,
fees.
Yeah. So it'll have zero inflation, which means that actually let me keep that up there. It'll have zero inflation, which means no coins are ever new coins are ever minted, new Pulse is ever minted, but and 25% of all fees are burnt, and the other 75% will go to validators and people who like delegate their Pulse to those validators, and like whether that's going to be worth a lot of money or not is also very unknown, because although we think there'll be lots of trading because it's so cheap to trade, it means those fees won't be worth that much. And so that's also kind of like, I'm not like, although it's an upward pressure in terms of price, because 25% of fees are constantly getting burnt. If the transaction costs are so minuscule, it might not actually make much of a difference. But then we'll also get all of the speculative value of Pulse, because people will come in and go, oh, it's a new coin. It's like that's one thing that happened when I first got into crypto and I saw Ethereum and I looked at it all. I was like, I don't see how value is going to accrue at this layer, because they're printing all of these tokens and I can only see the value accruing in these tokens. Now, I was very wrong in terms of that, because it has accrued quite a lot of value. But I also thought that once they had the ETC fork, when they had a big hack, the DAO hack, and then they wanted to roll it back, and the rolled back chain became what is now Ethereum, and the true like chain that's like you can't change became ETC. That's the one that ended up losing all the value. I thought it was kind of Ethereum shooting themselves in the foot, And I thought long term, value is not going to accrue here because of that. Because we but then later on, there were other devs who wanted to roll it back for another reason, and they weren't allowed to. So it did end up kind of, but it really just goes to show you that all of this, even though we talk about trustlessness and we talk about this and that, it really does come down to narratives. It comes down to social consensus, and it's going to, and the market is the true test of that social consensus. If people think that Pulse is going to be valuable, they will buy it and they will hold it. And then if more people buy it and hold it, the price will go up. If people think that that Pulse is not going to be is not valuable, then eventually the price will go down. Like, it's a battle of narratives, like a lot of this stuff is. And so not only are we betting on the mechanics of all of this, we're also betting on the vast kind of perception of people, and how much narratives will catch on and start occurring. And things can be kind of self-referencing. Like, if something goes up in value, then everyone thinks, oh, this is something that goes up in value. And then people start believing that it goes up in value, and so it's good to hold this. I mean, that's what Bitcoin is. You know what I mean? It's just a story in a lot of ways.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I reckon the price has got to go up. Like, it's Richard Hart's making it. It's going to be good. Believe me. I don't even have to.
You know what? I think the future is going to be a multi-chain world, because it's all competing narratives. I think that some things are going to, like, everything's going to be, volatile and stuff like that. But generally speaking, the narrative is that fiat is shit. They're printing it to oblivion. It's monopoly money. And stuff is starting to pour into cryptocurrency because at least we know they can't print more of that, right? And so, and because it's kind of because it's got no regulation around it as well, it's where all the innovation in the world is being drawn towards. So anyone who's kind of like wants to build something or do something, they're being drawn into cryptocurrencies because governments can't stuff them up too much, and whereas in all of these other like areas, because we're playing with this infinite money printer, we don't know the real value of stuff. Yeah,
there's no sovereignty anymore. The value, it's just gone.
Sovereignty is a big word. You know what I mean? Like, what does it mean to be a sovereign free person? And like, that's not necessarily a strict definition of that. We kind of have degrees of sovereignty. You know what I mean? Like, I can't fly. I haven't got the freedom to fly. You know what I mean? So does that mean I'm I'm banned from, like, I can't defy the things of physics. So, like, there's that, but then there's also what, restrictions governments place on you, or what restrictions your own, like, social circle, place on you, and people through telling you things or making you or that make you feel a certain way, to people try to control each other. That's also a form of non-sovereignty. So there's really a lot of different facets to sovereignty and what it is to be free, I think. So that's a big... I just want to answer this because it's been up for a while. Is there a Uni V3 on the Pulse angle? This is going to be really interesting, Russ, because they're launching Uni V3 with a license, which means people can't copy it. So it will be up to them whether they think it's worth having Uni V3 on the Pulse network. And so that's going to be a really interesting choice for the Uniswap people. Like, they will decide whether V3 is on, as the way I'm seeing it play out, but they will decide whether, like, we can have V2 and we can have V1. And in a lot of ways, I'd kind of prefer V1. Because that's just the simplest. And it's like we don't need, all we need is simple. Like, for a decentralized exchange, like, what they're bringing into V3 to me is not good for users. they're basically turning liquidity providers into degens. Like they're offering all of these kind of ways that liquidity providers can play it in terms of what they can offer. And they're just adding a whole lot of more risk reward to the whole liquidity providing thing. And I think they're going to fuck it. I think the strength of a DEX is if it's just straightforward. It's like you have, where it's not complicated. Like when I was reading through it to try to understand even the risks and reward, it's really difficult to wrap your head around. And I'm sure all these people are going to ape into it, not fully understanding what they're doing. Maybe some people will understand what they're doing in terms of providing liquidity, but also you can that's a kind of retrospective thing. Yeah, it worked out for them, so therefore they understood what they were doing. I mean, it's going to play out, but I see a lot of people losing a lot of money on liquidity providing on V3.
Hey, Blue Bum, it makes you wonder how many Vs there's going to be. Like really, if people are already having problem getting out their money out of the V1 or V2, and now there's a V3, how many Vs is there going to be? How much money will be lost in the end?
They'll keep going. They all already want to have like optimistic roll-ups on. Like they've already announced they're having optimistic roll-ups. So even though they're coming out with V3, they're desperate to start scaling Ethereum. And that's why Uniswap is in a really interesting position. Like they have such good connections with Ethereum, and it'll be interesting to see whether they see Pulse as a friend or a competitor. Like it's not really a competitor. Well, if they side with Ethereum, they might see it as a competitor.
Pulse is the savior, Blue Bum.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, I mean, they saw Sushi Swap happen and they saw Pancake Swap happen. And so somebody just took all of their hard work and just basically copied their hard work and is now profiting from their hard work.
Yeah.
So, but Pulse is different because all of their tokens are coming over and they'll hold all of those tokens and all of the value accrual will come over onto the Pulse chain. Like that, it will come down to whether they make a smart business decision or whether they just kind of like hate Richard and want to side with ETH or something like that, Yeah. Jackson's in the house. Hey, bro.
Jackson.
Hey guys, how are you?
Hey, Jackson, how you going?
Yeah, good. Well done, Sammy. That was a good effort the other night. 6 hours worth.
Thanks. Yeah, it was a long day. I had 5 hours sleep, then got up and had Cabana stream for an hour and a half, ate my breakfast, then started with the other stream, and I crashed. I just zonked out.
Yeah, that's a
payment for me.
6 hours is a marathon. Well done.
Good fun.
Good work.
Were you the one pumping the hex price just now, Jackson?
Oh yeah. I wanted to get a decent bag, and I woke up this morning and thought, I can see where this is all heading. I might jump in and grab a bit. It already pumped. So everyone obviously's got the same idea.
And how are you, Jackson? All right.
Yeah, going well. Yeah, I'm not sure what you guys have been talking about. I've been swimming for the last hour with my eldest daughter, so I've missed half of the stream, but thought I'd jump in and help out where I could.
Nice.
Yeah, no, it's pretty. Sorry, you go.
Well, we've been talking a lot about all the kind of gameplay and what's happening and everything like that. It's good for you if you haven't heard of all of that. How do you see, like, the different plays that you might do coming into this?
Yeah, so I'm definitely going to be starting to get a bit of a short list together of projects that I think can't be fucked with. So if they've got admin keys or there's a reason why bringing them across will be problematic, then they're obviously not the ones that are of interest. So the way I've been describing it is I think there's 2 or 3 plays, and there's a straight out alpha play, which is if you buy Pulse, or you're sacrificing to get Pulse, there's probably going to be some pretty good gains just in that. And then you can start layering gains on top of that. So, and we've already seen it with the price of Hex pumping this morning. people are understanding how this sacrifice thing is, the mechanics of how it's going to work, where you can pump your own initial bags, sacrifice them, hopefully get a good kicker on the Pulse side, so that original alpha return I was talking about, and then once back on PulseChain, you could then go and buy Hex again and push the price up again. So you can sort of double pump your Hex bags, but also pick up all these, hopefully a good bag of Pulse that you can then go out and start, and this is the next layer, go out and start acquiring projects that are in that just price discovery phase as the chain launches, and you get all those arbitrage opportunities between the ETH tokens and the Pulse tokens. So yeah, there's going to be quite a lot going on. But I think even if you cock it up and you don't figure out how all the little nuances, buy Hex, sacrifice your Hex, buy it again on the other side. I don't think you're going to go too far wrong.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about if we were going to go shopping for PRC20s, which ones we'd get, and I said maybe a starting point is what Richard has listed that he's going to accept for Pulse. You'd imagine that he would be wanting projects that, like he would want coins in projects that he likes, or at least doesn't mind holding. And then obviously things without admin keys.
So I don't think that's part of it, but I think what he's looking for is things that bring the required utility as well. So you need your dexes. If there's guys, I don't know, you got all your compound and your RVs and all those guys, that's all the DeFi. That is all the core building blocks, and they're legitimate projects. Whether or not they got admin keys, that's another discussion, but they are utilities.
Well, I just looked at Arve before the stream, and Arve doesn't have admin key.
Yep. So things that bring that utility, if they're the more decentralized, the better. But you've got, like you mentioned, you've got teams like Uniswap, which keep getting screwed over when everyone forks. But although they didn't necessarily do the right thing by Hex, that's not what you shouldn't try and isolate them from coming across. So if they come across, that's going to bring a big swag of things across.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see whether, we were just talking about this before, whether they bring version 3 across. Because as I understand it, we can't version 3 because it's licensed to them for 2 years. And so, but because they have everything brought over, they might want to launch version 3 on Pulse. And that will
you're talking about two different things though. So version 1 and 2, if they come across, that's not something new we're doing. They still control it all. So the issue is with things like Uniswap is people keep copying the code and rebadging it like QuickSwap, and that is not good for the Uniswap team. But regardless, V1, V2 is going to come across, and V3, if it's already up and running, it will come across as well. And then it's just up to that team to get it rolling and get it working. No one else can.
Yeah, that's my question is if they decide not to have version 3, like if they pull version 3 from Pulse.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, so if they choose not to support Pulse, which is it really in their best interest not to?
It's not. It'll only be because they see it as a threat because they're in there with the Ethereum.
Yeah, it'll be if they're trying to make a more of a political statement.
Exactly.
Where they're saying, "Oh no, we're with ETH," sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because you haven't seen them. Well, we don't know. They might go across to Binance Smart Chain. You never know. Not sure.
Do you understand how Chainlink accrues value? Like, I understand what it is. It's an Oracle service, and they get paid. The other chains pay them to use it. But do you understand like how the value of that business gets put onto the token?
Look, I don't know the specifics. If I was talking in general terms, though, so if you've got, it's about capturing the value within that system. So you've got people that are supplying data feeds into the system. So you would like to think that they get remunerated by linked tokens in some fashion for providing that feed. The guys that utilizing that feed on the other side of the equation might be paying linked tokens to pay for that feed, I'm assuming. So you're basically creating that closed loop system where all the participants are beneficiaries of the link ecosystem, which I think is fine. Now, that's a lot of assumptions because I've never delved into it, but that would make sense the way they do it.
Yeah, I'm just not sure whether it's like with Uniswap, whether it's more of it's a very much a sticky tape on token, where some rewards, but it's so minuscule. So it's more about the narrative that it's associated with this project.
I hope it's not, because that surely they would have been smarter than that when they've done it. I honestly haven't taken the time to look into it, but you would think that would be pretty core to its value. But otherwise, why the hell is anyone buying Link? But
it's worked with Uniswap. Like, people see the token as a representation of a value of that project, even though it is just a.
Yeah, but I think that what they see is the future value of it. So they've started off with no developer fees in V1. V2 added the developer fee switch, which I don't even know if they've flicked on yet. And then V3 adding in more things where they can extract more value by being a middleman, which could potentially then go out to uni governance token holders. That's
what I mean. It's like
yeah. No, I know what you're saying.
Yeah. It's so speculative, hey.
Yeah.
But it hasn't mattered. Like, we've seen the price. Like, people just associate it with that project, and that's what gives it its value.
You know what I find really, really funny is so when I was looking at how to launch tokens way back when, a couple of years ago, the big crosses against whether it was a security or not was, do you get voting rights? If you got voting rights, that it implies some sort of shares. And do you get a distribution, like a return or a dividend or something like that, because that implies shares and securities as well. Yet now that is open slather, and everyone straight out, it's a governance token, so you get a vote.
Yeah.
And you're going to get distributions. Like, how is that not a security? I don't get it. But I don't know whether
the governments just don't know how to handle it all, and they're so far behind on the tech.
That is out and out as security. Yeah. The only thing I can think is maybe it's got zero value and it's sold or something. I don't know, because they're essentially giving it away. They're yield farming it out. Although, I don't know. I don't know now. It's crazy. Like, everyone hammers Richard for the way he's done things, but if you look across what they're doing, they're flat out securities.
I know. That's the whole funny thing. And we were discussing this. I mean, this whole sacrifice thing has really confuses people with the term sacrifice. You know what I mean? And to me, it's only Richard kind of like wanting to do it to the letter of the law, and that's why he's doing it this way. But it's so kind of freaks people out. But he's complying with the law above all of the other projects, hey?
Yep. Yeah, no, I think people that get it. So that's the important thing, and the others will come along later when they figure it all out and things turn to shit, and that's fine. We'll be waiting. So I think everyone they're still trying to absorb what was spoken about on the stream yesterday. There was a lot of information, and it's good that we've got all the timestamps there now, because I want to go back and re-watch that and pick up a few gems that I'm sure I've missed or misunderstood.
Unfortunately, I think that still nothing is set. It surprised me that he said the sacrifice period might start in a week or two. I was just like, whoa! I would have thought you would have had to have a kick-ass website up and running. You would have had to have a white paper that we can all sift through, and you would have had to nail down all of these kind of things about what's happening and what's all about.
White papers, then that's promises, isn't it?
Not necessarily. You can just say this is what it is. I would call it whatever, a teal paper. I don't know. This is what we're doing. Like, not necessarily a promise. It's just, this is how we're going to validate the network. This is as a technical person, you want to know all of that kind of stuff. Like, who are what the validators will need. Like,
I think that's the important thing you don't want to know.
Oh.
So that's the divide. So as soon as they start talking about what they're going to do on Pulse side, that has nothing to do with X.
That's promises.
Yeah.
I see. Really, this sacrifice it's actually a sacrifice.
It is, yeah.
We're giving to somebody, and we're not giving into a contract. We're just giving to something that's going to be on an Excel sheet, which can just do whatever with that.
Yep.
And like, we don't know what they're going to build or how they're going to build it. We have a rough draft. And so the sacrifice really is a sacrifice, hey?
Yep. Yeah. But if you know if you can understand the game theory behind it all, then you can read between the lines.
Yeah.
Someone says a hope and a prayer.
It's good to know. It's like, and if you want to spread the risk, maybe don't ape in too much into the actual Pulse token, like.
Do you think that's the way people are going to behave?
No, everyone's going to ape in like no business. Yeah, that's the thing. Everyone's going to ape in.
But it is like the first comment I made in Telegram. Someone said, "I'm going to sell my Hex tokens," and I commented. I said, "Why would you sell your Hex tokens? Like, sell some other shit." But actually, when it sinks in, you go, "Oh, get it." So yeah. No, it's going to be interesting. It's a cracker opportunity, I reckon. And it's a small group of people at the moment that understand what is actually going on. So it's a subset of the Hex community that actually understand it. Now, I think that will spread rapidly, but this is where you get to be on the pointy end of things happening and make the most of it. So make sure you do.
Yeah. I love Clairvoyant. I love your comments. Maybe you are clairvoyant. But like, wouldn't it be I mean, look, guys, I've also been kind of like diving a little bit into ETH 2, and like they talk about ETH 2 as if it's going to be a merge. But then you go into the actual technicalities, it's just another fork. There's the only thing that's merged about it is that they want to like sell that narrative that it's a merge. So it's them trying to like get out in front of the story. And so I could see a future where ETH2 goes off on its thing. The miners say, bugger that, we've got this cash cow of like ETH1, we're going to continue that fork. And so we get a whole nother lot of set of coins on ETH2 as well. So like, we've just had HexTA come in, and so we want to bring him on. He's have a big night out, mate. How you going?
Yeah. Wedding, and so I'm still a little bit voice is a little bit rusty, but yeah, I'm good. I'm glad you guys are still on so that I could catch you and say hi and just join in the excitement of what's going on with the Hex price at the moment.
Yeah, it's great to see you. Oh, yeah, the Hex is pumping at the moment, hey? It's still above 2 cents, hey? It's like,
I'm pretty sure, yep.
2.07 according to the Uniswap price. Or
looking good.
Yeah, I look at the Hex USDC on Uniswap V1. That's the one I typically look at.
I use V1, huh? How come?
You know what? I think I just, the chart's been on that one the whole time, and I just never changed it. I don't think I have the longest history, but you're probably right that the price would be more accurate on the V2 chart.
Yeah, it's a shame we can't merge the data from V1 onto V2. That would be awesome if we had a way of doing that.
Yeah, because you have that at the very start, and you never get
this would be something to look into. I don't know if anyone's got the skills out there. So on TradingView, there's the BLX chart, which basically takes all of Bitcoin's data from day dot. So they've obviously had to, they've had to somehow calculate that data. Yeah. So maybe if we could get a chart that actually took all the information we know about Hex from the very beginning and pushed it in, that would be awesome.
From all of the markets. Yeah, that'd be great. And
I don't know how you do that.
Isn't that what Nomics kind of does? Like,
Don't know. I don't know how far back they go in terms of Hex.
right.
I heard what you guys were saying while I was in the lobby about the ETH fork, and there was actually an influencer who I won't name, but he's a Bitcoin maxi, and he right from the very start when they started talking about this ETH 2.0, he said, "I want the copyright or whatever you want to call it, the IP on ETH-W and ETH-S, like as the tickers." He said that basically it's going to have to split into basic because the miners are going to say, "Hell no, we're not taking this zero profit." And he predicted there would be a hard fork that would result, and he said, I want not necessarily money, but I want the respect for the prediction that is going to be a shit show. It's going to split into two, and we're going to basically end up with these dual tickers, like ETH-W for ETH work and ETH-S for ETH proof of stake, like ETH stake. And
I can't see how that doesn't happen. Like,
you look at how much.
They're not going to sit beside and say, "Well, we're earning all this money. We're just going to let it all go, and now we're going to start mining something else." They'll keep it going. It's a total cash cow. And
ETH miners have been killing the pig this year. It's insane. Like when you look at the graphs, I wish I could dig one out, but I don't know exactly where it is. But the earnings is insane.
Yeah. So Nomics actually does.
They can drive the same narrative that maxis drive about Bitcoin, saying, "Oh, we don't trust proof of stake. We think that proof of work is the only way to truly have a secure network," and that narrative will appeal to some people. And so, yeah, they've kind of got a fair justification rather than it just being, "Hey, we're greedy. We want to keep making money." They can kind of drive a more sort of selfless narrative.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have a look at how much.
Nomics does compile because they've got it from the very start.
Oh, nice.
Cool. Can you do a trading view chart?
Can you get it as a bar chart
from there?
Not sure.
Nomics is so good.
Yeah, Nomics is amazing. Hey, is it this
so
one?
So all we have to do is get trading view to pull data. Surely we can get a Nomics connection.
Yeah, well, with TradingView, people can sort of customize their own stuff, can't they? So you can sort of make your own things if you want.
Yeah, if you're just because it's an API, so you could just pull data from Nomics straight into it. Surely, I have to have a look at that.
You can also, actually, I guess if there's no, that wouldn't work because if there's times because you can add tickers together and things like that to sort of make your own indexes. But unfortunately, if you're adding two where one doesn't have a section, like that has no history, then obviously the hex price, you'll see it there, but then once the new ticket comes in, then it would be double the price, which would be incorrect. So that wouldn't work. But this looks cool. I'm looking at it now, this hex on Nomics, the chart.
And Nomics, I saw an interview with Clay and the other guy, their financial guy. And I think it's just two of them who kind of run the whole thing. Or maybe no, they have a team of people, but there's two kind of main guys. And they were being interviewed on the Chainlink YouTube channel. And they're a node for Chainlink. Interesting little fact.
Yep.
Oh, that you can have bar chart. I'm just looking at that chart that you had up a second ago. You can change that from a line chart to a bar chart on Nomics. That's tight.
Yeah, Nomics is fantastic.
So we've already seen. I think we've already get back to the ETH chain fork. We've already seen the miners start to split that already, haven't we? With ETG, I think it was. We've seen something pop up in one of the. Yeah, which was I don't know how much support it's got, but it was exactly what you're talking about, where the ETH miners they want to keep control of a portion of the network or the network. So they've already started to fork off one of those, which I think is probably a trash idea, the way they've done that. but as it gets to the point in time where so I think there's a difficulty bomb or something in there that forces them to have to
Ice Age.
move. Ice Age, is it? Yeah.
But
So
I think they keep pushing it back with hard forks though. So
yeah,
that difficulty bomb was something that they're like, oh, this will force us to go to proof of stake. But then if you can just hard fork it to delay it, then
that's right.
You can just do that to infinity. You can just keep delaying it.
That's right. So that's what they'll do is when it gets to that point where they have to do it, it'll just split.
Yeah, exactly.
They're gonna keep just rubbing their greasy little fingers together until it gets to the point where proof of stake is ready to go, and at that point, that's when the shit show will happen.
I mean, the other thing that I was thinking was if Richard does this, when he does this, and let's say it's successful, and then the ETH 2.0, they've got a fire under their bum to get theirs out, and they do theirs, but then they're also leaving the legacy ETH behind. So now we have 3 chains, and then everyone else is going to see this, what they've done. And so you're going to have Binance coming out with their new chain, and they're going to fork Pulse and Ethereum or whatever. And we're just going to see these because it's a way to bring users over. If it works, people will copy what Richard is doing.
Yeah, yes, possibly. So we've all come up from the idea where Bitcoin was Bitcoin, each network was its own network, and the idea of atomic atomic cross swaps or whatever they call them. Yep. The idea of having those to connect the two networks was always like a dream. Like everyone wanted to do it, and it never really has sort of eventuated. But now I think we're at that point where the technology's evolved enough. So having chains that speak together it's a thing now. It can be done. So I think the big concern about splitting chains and things like that, I think that's going to be less and less of a problem moving forward, because all these interconnects between all the chains that's what's coming out now. You're seeing it all getting rolled out. So I think Richard's his timing on this is probably pretty superb, I think. So it's not mainstream, so you're not getting left behind or coming to the party late. You're doing something big, and you're doing it at the right time, where in 6 months' time, these interconnects between all the chains is going to be very, very common. I know, Bluebum, you've done a bit of digging around on the different bridges and the way interlinks between the chains are working. I've done a bit of digging around on the Tendermint side of things as well, how that's actually playing out and how all these chains are going to be communicating together in the future. So I think it's going to be the new norm. We've seen it as a negative, but now I think it is just going to be, that's how the space is.
I don't think it's a negative. I think it's like a super positive. I agree. Yeah. I think it's going to drive the next bull run. Yep. In a lot of ways. And especially when people realize that they can fork and kind of double or around double value and bring users over to different things. I don't know if you'll get the forking of entire networks a lot. I don't think that's going to be a thing, because that is it's a pretty bold task to undertake. I think Rich is the first to have a crack at it, really, other than like back in the day when ETH Classic split, but there was nothing on the network really back then. It was pretty minor. The same thing happened after Bitcoin forked. After Bitcoin forked, all of a sudden afterwards, we had another fork.
Yeah, but that's one coin though.
Yeah.
So that's easy to do. That's easy to spin up, but ETH is
low complexity.
Yeah, that's a big job. A lot of thought and
coin
it might be
anything built on top of it.
It actually might just be easier to do the whole lot without any.
Maybe in the future, but being the first person to do it, it's a bit of a challenge, I think, isn't it?
I mean, obviously.
Good on you.
Look, obviously, if you want to make it secure and safe, and you want tokenomics in there, and there's all sorts of that stuff, which is what makes it really, really hard. And you have to think about, it's obviously not an easy thing if you want to do it properly. But if you just want to spin one up,
oh yeah,
there's going to be all of those that come as well. Like we saw with Hex, there's all these copycat ones. Now, when Richard does this, there's going to be people copycatting his move of this, I think.
He said that on stream yesterday. You're going to get your scammers on the Pulse chain as well. So, there's money to be made.
Yeah, unavoidable.
Yeah,
that's something different. But yeah, totally. There's going to be scams.
That stream was epic. That stream was epic. I was literally watching it all the way up to the wedding. I actually had the groom in my car, and I was kind of playing personal driver for him, taking him back to the reception to get flowers and things like that, and just had it playing the whole time to try and hear as much of it as I could until I had to literally stop watching it, which I missed the last third or something, which I've been watching this morning while I've been getting ready. And it was such a good stream. So much quality content in there.
A tangent. Have you?
And I also know. Yep.
Have you thought about? Let's get into the game. Like, have you thought about how you're going to play this? Like, in terms of, are you going to like?
I've been thinking about it. The last comment I wanted to make about Sammy's stream with Richard was that I loved how lots of the things that they were talking about and that Richard was saying that he had been thinking through mirrored the things that we had been chatting about in our Australian Hex group that we've got for this stream.
Yeah, for sure.
So
It was so awesome to meet him. He's such a nice guy, and he was a lot of fun, and he answered a lot of unethical questions, which we loved about it. We wanted to ask more, but didn't get time. The boys were a bit upset because they didn't get as much Pulse info. But as I said to Bluebum, I don't think there's too much available yet. I think, the sacrifice stage is coming up, which is fantastic. But you know what? Richard's going to bring it out when he's ready. He'll just jump on stream and he'll just get it all out there. I mean, we had that stream planned for 2 months. It just so happened that he was going to drop some info there. But it was a lot of fun and the girls were fun. So thanks for your comments because I appreciate them.
Yeah, to answer your question, Bluebum, obviously it's a lot to think about. We have to think pretty deeply about this. And the thought that I had this morning, I'm not sure if anyone has covered this or made this comment, is I think I'll probably, the one thing that I will be looking to do as a play is prior to the launch or prior to like whatever snapshot there is, I'll probably be looking to consolidate or pull out things which are in like weird contracts that are really complex. So pulling things off layer 2, things that are like being like farming and things that could potentially break, that Richard himself said, yeah, look, the sort of those abstractions that get more and more complicated and how they might get like wrecked. And he said himself, some people might be big winners, some people might be big losers. I think I'll be sort of pulling that economic energy back to things that are in that more simple layer, i.e. just having Hex or ETH or USDC or something like that, so that I know that those things are actually going to be mirrored sort of correctly, correctly across. What do you think about that?
I think you're correct, and having things in ETH at that particular point in time is probably not
not ETH.
So
anything but ETH.
And even USDC, like that's going to be a tricky one because that's going to rely on people's perception of what the ETH, the Pulse USDC is worth.
Yeah. But Richard did make a comment exactly what we talked about in a little chat the other day, where we said you can't just duplicate that because Coinbase they back that, and if you duplicate it, that screws their backing. So you can't. But
he also did say, how we talked about both counter arguments being somewhat correct. He also did admit that some of these things, they end up having value even though they shouldn't.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So
I don't expect.
Actually, the big one for me, the biggest one was I learn things from Richard all the time, which actually helps me to change my strategies in various things. This was something indirect. That comment that he made about Matic, I was unaware that was not a trustless layer 2. So I am one of the people, I actually am a liquidity provider over on, because I thought I was helping the Hex community. Like I thought I was helping Hex by going across to Matic and providing liquidity pairs, Hex Quick, Hex ETH, Hex USDC. And I did not realize that everything that I have across on that layer theoretically it has the counterparty risk of the person with admin keys, and I don't like that at all. So
yeah, I don't.
Second reason to pull that stuff back onto the main chain.
I don't think it's the layer 2 stuff that's an issue. Obviously, if you've got stuff across there, it is out of your control somewhat.
Is it just the bridge?
Yeah, I think it was more the bridge, because you've got to hold that asset. You've got to lock that in the bridge contract so you don't end up with a duplicate. So I think it's the bridge contract that's the biggest.
Bridge, okay.
I'll tell you what it is.
Once you're over there, it's kind of trustless. But
I'll tell you what it is, because like I went through it when I pulled, like I had a whole lot of stuff over. I had liquidity. I was providing liquidity over on QuickSwap as well, and then at some point I decided to pull it all. And there are these checkpoints, and so sometimes the checkpoints go through quickly. Sometimes they take like 13 hours, and then what happened is that I was waiting on a checkpoint going, shit, I'm not getting my money out. And then it went through, and then half an hour, another one went through. And what I realized was that it was a person. There must have been a person who like basically bridges all, like has to do the admin key to bridge all of that stuff back. And so it's
or it could have been network congestion.
No, because
maybe no.
That doesn't make sense, because
I just
because
I don't think you'd have someone manually do that. Surely that would be pretty clunky.
I don't want to drop the names of other chains. Although actually Richard did himself. So I don't need to say this. There was a bridge that I was in a chat and people were talking about using that bridge, and people were freaking out that their money wasn't arriving. So they were asking other people, how long did it take you for your shit to arrive? And people had these varying answers. Some people it was 15 minutes, some people it was an hour, some people it was 2 hours. And so we were trying to work out what the reason for that delay was. And I think we landed on, it was network congestion, this is what everyone assumed, it was network congestion at the arrival chain, the side where the coins were arriving.
But that only means
some IDO or something.
It's the person doesn't want to pay that much gas.
Yeah,
that's why.
They
build them up until a lower gas period to move it all back.
Because when you're doing a bridge, I've used bridges before. You can choose the gas on the chain that you're on, but I've never chosen how much gas to pay at the other side. So I'm not sure if you even get to calibrate, like to choose.
So
that might be.
So in a lot of instances, what they do is they have a trigger, because obviously you don't want to pay peak prices every time you transmit. So they'll just be watching what the current GUI is, and then when it gets into their acceptable range, then it'll trigger orders. Just I think exchanges do all that and stuff as well. So,
but they're batching it.
Yeah.
They're batching it, so it is their cost. They'll still charge you for it. You have to still get like gas to get back on it, but they're batching it, and that's what Matic were doing. They were like waiting for like periods of time, and normally it was every 4 hours, but then it would change. And then what I noticed was it's not the congestion, because all these people were going, what the hell's going on? And people were panicking, and in the Telegram and everything like that.
Yeah. People panicked so quick.
Finally went through, and then half an hour later, another one went through. So it's nothing to do with them getting a certain amount of transactions and then doing it.
Oh, no, a gas limit though, or a gas fee. So they will have a tolerance where they say, well, we're not going to pay 300 GUI. It's silly. So we'll wait till it gets down to 100 or 50 or whatever, and then it does things, which is not great. Like it should be able to get your money out.
I reckon
there's something
else. The person bridging it back, and then later, like Chris Black came on, like he said, he was talking about it's a 2 for 3 admin key for the bridge back or something like that. Or
Richard said theoretically those keys could all be held by the same person. You know how sometimes with these multi-sigs, it's only really a multi-sig if you can. So you don't know who has the keys.
So coming back to your original comment, Tangent, it's you don't want to be in these weird and wacky places, have funds tied up in them or value tied up in them, because you're not sure what's going to come across and what you're going to get. So
also they might not be supported early in terms of some of those contracts. They might not even have front ends.
That's
I might not
opportunity
be able to
cost. Yeah.
access those funds at all. Like, I mean, unless I start interacting directly with contracts or building my own front ends, I think some of that stuff, and then you might just forget that stuff exists. So I think, I think at least with anything that you've got down, if you bring it all back to actual just individual tokens on the base layer, you know that those things are going to be replicated.
So my opinion is hold ERC20s if you want to hold value in something, and make sure they're not a stable coin or a wrapped ETH or something like that. Hold minimal amounts of ETH. I think the pure play is Hex.
That's Hex, eh?
Makes sense. Like, why would you? Yeah. I mean, unless
you also think that the Hex on the Pulse side will have as much or maybe even more value on the Pulse side, whereas a lot of these other things we don't know if they'll hold their value on the Pulse side.
Okay, so
I think if you take the really simple example or the simple comment that we are going to have a large overlap in the Hex community to Pulse community just because of followers of Richard, right? So I think Hex will be the most active pair / everything, things being built, front ends, everything on that new chain, at least early. Like, we don't know what, things might build out later, but so that's the one that's just the most likely to supported correctly, value all of those things. So I think holding Hex is probably
I'm picking just a random project, so I'll pick on Link. So if you hold Link on ETH, the best that you can do when it gets copied across is get a duplicate. So that might be okay, but when that first launches over there, Link might be worth a fraction of what it is on the ETH chain. So that's that arbitrage opportunity. So why would you just settle for a duplicate copy when you could take that value that's in Link, and even if you didn't go through Hex, but you sacrificed that to get a heap of Pulse, and then you get let loose on the other side where you can actually buy the Link using this big bag of Pulse you've got.
Yeah, you can 10,000x your Link back, but you have it on the Pulse, not on the.
That's right.
I was about to say, then you don't end up with it on both chains.
That's true. That is true. But that's I guess that's the risk you take if you do that.
I've just worked out an easier way to say what I was trying to say before. With every other everything, you're getting literally just a copy of the code. But I think with Hex, you're actually going to get a copy of the community, which is something that is obviously, we know that community is one of the most powerful things in crypto. It's really important. And I think the Hex community will be on both sides of this. Whereas a lot of these other projects, it'll take, if they come across at all, it's going to take time for them to know about it and for their community to actually come over and support it.
Hey, Tangent. One thing I was saying before was that it might be good to look at who was using a certain project, had a lot of users, that really just died down since the gas fees went up.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that was another great point that we talked about and Richard talked about in his stream.
Well, then who do you think, which communities do you think would fit into that category? Who's really been stuffed over by the ETH fees in terms of other projects on? Yeah.
Don't mention the clones or copies.
I try to do the Richard Hart thing where I don't actually talk shill other projects, but so
just say them. We can
generic categories.
We can say whatever.
Basically, I guess anything where the contracts get complex. So any level of complexity in contracts. So like flash loans and sort of all those sorts of protocols where it gets more complicated than literally just really simple interactions. Which so
Compound Aave, set protocol, just off the top of my head.
So what projects?
I think everyone got impacted by everyone on the ETH network got impacted by the higher gas fees. Really, I think. I mean, some more than others because of that S loading function, but yeah, I think every project could benefit from this. I'm trying to think if I remember any, like, to answer your question specifically, I'm trying to think if I remember any communities really complaining about this sort of stuff. But I'm not deeply into lots of communities because obviously that's too time consuming. So for me, I'm largely, for other projects, I'm largely following that sort of with just a broad technological interest. I'm not as deeply intimate with their communities. But yeah, I think the ones you listed, and just, I guess anything with complex contracts.
If you can see a team that's already doing multi-chain, that's
a good point.
Because that way it shows that they're a bit agnostic in terms of who they just want to grow their network. They're not hardcore. We're only going to do ETH. So I think if you can find any,
there's a Launchpad project that got pressured by their community that the pressure was so strong from their community because of the gas fees that they actually started doing dual chain with another chain, so that they were basically doing it on both chains, so that people that were crying about the fees could have. But obviously the projects launching on that Launchpad had to be different on each chain, because some of these projects, if the project's not launching multi-chain, then so you're kind of suddenly you're getting different projects on, if you're doing the Launchpad on one chain than the other. But that was purely under community pressure that they had to do that.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. That's gonna be the biggest thing, is the technicalities of getting the project across. It's difficult, but it's pretty much done for them. It's okay. You got to get the community across and get the
users,
the value.
As the users go over and start trading, the projects will follow them. Hey,
and we've seen it happen on Binance Smart Chain. People will go where, like, if you've got Uniswap and it costs $30 to do a transaction, but you can do that exact same function over here for a cent. Go pay the cent. Like, people will do it.
I've just thought of another one. With some of these farming ones, how you're getting these rewards being generated. Sometimes, as those rewards are being generated, you would like the idea of being able to compound those gains by sort of claiming the reward and then putting it back into the same farm.
Yeah.
But if the fees are so high that the amount of reward that you're claiming is less than the fee, you can't do it. But once you're on a chain where the fees are super low, you can actually, there are all sorts of interesting things that you can do. So some of these protocols could actually grow faster if you have lower fees. And users that are doing things with small value. So I was talking about contract complexity. It's not necessarily just the complexity of the contracts that makes the gas go high, but it's the relative gas fee compared to what you're doing. So all of these use cases where people want to do these tiny little things where they just want to do something that the thing that they're doing doesn't have this huge amount of value that makes it valuable enough to pay those sorts of huge gas fees to do. So, and that, I think that has crushed a lot of the tinkering, playing around, like, the thing that we're supposed to be here for, which is building tech. It's not, so once you have those high gas fees, you can't just play around with it anymore. You better be sure that the thing that you're doing is going to make you at least as much money as what the gas fee is going to cost.
Yeah.
So I think once you go to a chain that has these lower fees, I think it's going to bring back that fun aspect of being able to just play around with things and try different protocols and just see how things work without having to be so cautious with your maneuvers through the space.
Play with $20 or $50 rather than having to put 1,000 to make it or 2,000 to make it at all worthwhile, and then still be really, like even like synthetics might be an interesting one to look into.
Yep.
Just a tip for people.
Yeah. Some of those more complex dexes that have things like margin trading and other things that could work better with lower fees as well. Yeah.
Wow, like DYDX.
Yeah.
That's going to be.
I thought we were trying to not name specific projects.
We can talk. We're talking about
okay. Yeah, so they're,
Actually,
what everyone's can make up their own bloody decisions. Everyone.
Yeah. Actually, now that with the Pulse thing, I guess we don't have to be as guarded with this truth diode, right? With Hex, because it was a specific project, we wanted to, not shill other projects. But now Pulse kind of encapsulates all projects, right? So you can be, I think that's fair.
so
Sammy, sorry, you go.
No, you're right.
Sammy, something that I'm still a little bit unsure of, and I'm not sure if you guys can clarify this for me, or something from the stream from yesterday, Sammy, that I might not have listened to yet because I haven't heard the tail end, is this aspect of with the sacrifice. I'm unclear on, how obviously there's different coins, so say like Doge and Hex and whatever that you can sacrifice in. Is there a competition within each category, or is there a competition between those coin categories, or is it just purely a competition like the ladder that we're talking about in terms of who might be rewarded for contributing more? Is that just basically every person, regardless of what they put in, converted into a USD dollar value, and then that is put on a ladder? I'm sort of unsure about where that competition lies, or is that something that hasn't been clarified yet?
I don't think it's been clarified yet. All that we know that we're going to be sacrificing for X, and that's going to come in a couple of weeks, week and a half, 2 weeks. But I think, as I was saying to Blue Bum, Richard's going to reward the early users. People FOMOing in, he doesn't give a shit about. He wants to reward people who believe in the project.
Yeah.
And Hexicans are not getting favoured in any way. They're already got their free second stack, so he's not worried about the Hexicans. But yeah, I just think really the earlier you get in and the more you put in, the better you're going to be off. But yeah, I don't think there's too much clarification as of yet.
Yeah, I liked what he said about how by having a relatively large window, so 3 to 7 days, I think he was saying, that people who are FOMOing in literally on the starting line, finger on the trigger, ready to get in at the very, 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 very start, there's no real point to doing that, because as long as you're within that first batch. So it's almost like those, I guess, how they start a marathon or whatever, where you kind of like, it's like starter groups sort of thing. So as long as you're in that first group, you're sweet. So it's less stressful, especially if something's not working properly, which I doubt would happen with a Richard Hart project, because his stuff's tight. But with other projects, I've seen people panicking because the website's not working, or something's gone down, or there's something wrong, and people know that if they don't get in right at the start because of that bonding curve, they're going to get a way worse deal. So people are losing their minds, harassing support. This kind of just takes the stress out of it, but also still rewards people for getting in early. So I think this is a sensible decision.
I'm actually just been from a distance keeping an eye on one project, which it's getting a lot of attention because of 3 Arrows pumping it and stuff. And literally they've segmented it into days, and you're waiting on with your finger on the trigger to try and get into the website. And the first day you can put in like $500 worth or some bullshit. And each day they ratchet up the price. But everyone's like, this is a big competition to try and get in, and you've got to be there at the right time to try and get in, which is a shit way to launch things. Yeah, we already know that they've already had their multiple private sales and pre-sales prior to that as well. So it's all these plebs that are coming in after that are going to get dumped on when this thing gets launched. So I think having no restriction on being able to get your funds in, but then not having that, like you say, that thing where everyone's got to battle to try and get it in the first day. Like you can just do it in a semi-calm way.
Yeah. You've got to
get your funds in. Yeah.
So you're still rewarding people for being early adopters.
Yeah.
Actually causing stress and panic. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think from what I could gather, my understanding is it's all going to be done on, like that ladder you're talking about is done on US dollar value. And so it will be weighted based on how much economic energy you've put in at a particular point in time.
I prefer that. And I'll tell you why. one of my concerns, if there was sort of a competitive battle within a coin, means that because obviously, like I was saying, with the overlap of Hex community and Pulse community, my prediction is that the Hex category is going to get smashed. Yeah. Also, a lot of people who made mad gains from Hex and then just became basically Hex maxis, and all they have is Hex.
Yeah.
So I think for multiple reasons that Hex category would be getting a lot of attention, like a lot of money contributed. And I guess in some ways, some people might think, oh, well, you know, if I'm contributing Hex, then it's sort of a win-win because actually, for various reasons, you're kind of, in terms of diversification, if Hex is sort of a bet on Richard, and I'm not saying anything to do with future work, I'm just saying in terms of his awesomeness, and Pulse is too, then throwing your Hex in, you'd imagine that if one's going to perform well, the other's probably going to perform well as well. So it's sort of not as much of a risk that you're going to be throwing something in that's going to go off and do its own thing. You know, there might be a higher correlation there, so you're not losing your diversification. Possibly. I mean, these are just. I'm not saying these are necessarily going to be true. I'm just saying these are things that.
I think that the multi-chain thing is important possibly from a taxation point of view. So if you, in a lot of cases, most things you go buy, swap whatever you've got, swap it into ETH or whatever, and then go sacrifice it. But as soon as you do, if you're holding Bitcoin and you swap into ETH, then you've just triggered an event. So you've already lost out, and then you've got to go do your sacrifice. But if you're coming straight from that, depending on where you live and whatever, but if you're coming straight from Bitcoin or Doge or wherever it is and getting X coin as a sacrifice, then you're not triggering those events. So I think that's important to have that to attract those people. So I think, and I couldn't see it being per coin, like you're saying, a competition. That wouldn't make sense, and it would make everyone would start gaming the various pools and stuff like that. I think that would fragment things too much.
At one point he was talking about having gold, silver, and bronze for, that was an overall kind of first place.
Yeah. Overall as well. Okay,
I did suggest like you could do that every single day, having the most of every day, or you could also do it having it for each coin that you do. You could have a gold, silver, bronze within each coin, but I don't think it sounds like he's taken up any of those ideas.
That is a good question. That's what I was thinking about.
What I was saying at the start of the stream as well is like this whole idea of getting in early or within the first 3 days or 7 days, because you'll get the best price on that bonding curve. You just have to like also think if everyone, like specifically with Hex, if all these Hexicans are buying up Hex to put it into the thing, and they're going to give that, sacrificing that's like it's putting up a whole lot of buy pressure onto the price. And so it could be that the USD value of Hex is down here at the start of the bonding curve, but it goes up more than 3.3 by the end of it. So you might be better off holding off, and because it is the price of Hex in US dollars within I think he said a 30-minute kind of moving average. Yeah.
So what was the percentage per day, or was it per week? The 4.2%, was that? Yeah,
like that's it was per day.
Per day or per?
Well, the first 3 days. I mean, he's changed it around.
In those blocks. So if you're
then day.
So if the price of Hex is going up more than 3%
a day,
you're better off
waiting
in later. It might be that thing where you've got a DCA. You've got a DCA into this as well.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some aspects because you guys are actually already starting to cover this question that's here about the strategy. I think that it's going to depend on a few things that we're not actually haven't been clarified yet, and regardless, even once we have that clarification, I think there's still going to be an aspect of luck that in terms of because of that fluctuation in price for all of these coins that are potentially going to get sacrificed.
Yeah,
some people are actually just going to get lucky that the coin that they sacrifice, which I think was it you, Sammy, that was, I remember, Sammy, on the Richard Hart stream, when you said, I'm thinking about just, oh no, actually, sorry. I think this was to do with buying things once Pulse has actually already launched, just getting on their version of Uniswap and just buying like $1 or $2 of like literally every token that exists. But this is kind of the same, where for some people, it might be an idea that they might want to just throw some of every coin in, because one of those coins might just happen to pump in US dollar price through that 30-minute averaging window, and you suddenly are getting, 10 times the economic value out of that coin that was sacrificed. And if you weren't in that pool, then you don't get that benefit. But it just depends how volatile the overall crypto markets are around the time.
There is one thing that we're not all factoring in.
Tell us.
We're all assuming. So if we take that alpha sort of channel that I was speaking about, where you whatever you've got, you put it into Hex, push the price of Hex up, go sacrifice that. That's great, but you've got to understand that we're not all pure Hexicans, where we're all going to come across to this new chain and it's all happy days. There is going to be people that will sell into that price rise. So as the price of Hex gets pushed up, there will be people that will sell into that. So we've got to, it's not just going to be a straight line up. Now, we'd like to think that we've got rid of a lot of the weak hands and everyone understands what's going on, but there's opportunistic traders as well that don't give a shit about the long term.
Yeah, that's a really good point for any coin.
Yeah, for any coin, yeah.
As price increases, there are, it's the Lambo effect.
Yeah,
there's a limit to how much gains someone can make before they want to go and buy their jet.
Yep. So I think we've just got to realize that is a possibility. We don't know. Well, actually, we've got a good idea of how much liquid Hex is out there in terms of liabilities now, don't we?
With all those possibilities of how to play it, I can see a hell of a lot of people not going for any one tactic and just spreading their tactics.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
DCA in a bit over the sacrifice period. Keep some of that, Hex for when it gets copied over. When you have a whole lot of Pulse, people are going to just be like, buy $100 here, $20 here of this one, this one, if it's really cheap, and just see what.
And the low fees of that new network will allow Sammy the idea. You can go and buy $1 of everything, because you won't get smashed with like 20 times as much fees to go and do that strategy.
That's the thing. Exactly.
Someone could code up a website that basically, where you just like a one-click buy that just goes and buys $1 of every dollar of literally every token contract on that new Uniswap.
I wonder if there's. I'm just thinking whether there's an index thing or something you can use. There's a lot of index tokens. I don't know how they work.
The protocol. You can just buy a whole lot of sets.
You're not buying the underlying tokens though. That's the thing. You need something that you set an index how you want it to be, and it goes out and buys those tokens. That's a really good thing. If we can find that tool, that would be an absolute cracker, where you can just point it at Uniswap and just go, have at it.
Something that I absolutely love, and I believe this to be true. On this new chain, when it will flush out, it'll reveal, shine a light on a lot of the projects that are complete bullshit.
Yeah, for sure.
Like what Richard was saying, the decentralized ones, they will work fine, because if it really is just code, then the code's going to be there. Anything that's heavily reliant on a team, then it tests the team. Are they willing? Are they going to come and actually do the work to support it? And if not, it's going to fall in a heap. And so you'll either see that it required a team, and B, that team wasn't willing to do the work. So that it will sort of will end up with a better ecosystem, that you just won't have all these ones where there's all these unknowns, where you have to go and do deep research and go and read the code to find out whether there's any backdoors and admin keys and that sort of thing. it's just kind of like doing that research for you on autopilot by actually testing to see whether it will work by itself, which is incredible. To me, that's a massive advantage.
Yeah. Have you covered the liquidity mining that was mentioned?
Yeah. Yep.
And I don't know. I haven't really put any thought into it because that was the first.
Oh, you mean yield farming? You mean?
Yeah.
With
So
your LP tokens.
Yeah, well, no. So Richard made mention that if he wanted the community to invest any energy, was to think about.
Was the way it worked over on QuickSwap was that you got rewards in QuickSwap, so he'd have to set aside some Pulse to give as rewards to those pools.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he was driving at. I'm assuming he wasn't referring just to straight out sort of liquidity providing, but how the
rewarded. How does Uniswap still have rewards for providing LP? It's not directly from.
No, of course. You mean
in terms of
no? So there's no yield. There's no yield farming.
You can use Uni LP tokens on other protocols to get rewards, but not directly by Uni.
That's right. Yeah.
The comparison I'm making here is, you know how you were saying, and that's true, Blue Bum, that on these clone versions of Uniswap, they have reward pools that reward you for providing liquidity to encourage people to provide liquidity. But on Uni, they don't do that because they don't need to, because people just provide liquidity because it's the big dog. So because that's actually being ported across, get what I'm saying?
Do you know why Uni doesn't do that though? It's because the individual projects do it for them.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like it's abstracted those projects. So you'll have like I won't list them, but those other projects, they provide rewards for their with their own token for you providing liquidity pairs on Uniswap.
For them. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I'm not sure where Richard was driving with all of this, but if I'm thinking it through, he wants to reward people that somehow provide liquidity for Pulse, and I don't know whether it's in between chains, like building those. Someone needs to put the interconnects in between the various chains and have pools of funds there for swapping in and out. So is that where the intention is to reward people for doing that? I don't know. It was just a comment he's thrown out there, and I've got to go back and rewatch it to understand what he's trying to drive at. But
it would have to be a new token, wouldn't it? It would have to be the reward would have to be paid in a new token. You can't pay the reward in Pulse because. So yeah, like imagine.
Yeah, because that was it. He was talking about treasuries and things as well. So maybe they're linked. So
he was saying basically anything that's been highly successful on ETH, that someone should be looking to do on Pulse.
Yeah, and we've got a guy that would know all about the Dash treasury as part of the community as well. Who's the chap from Dash? Bluey, do you know who that was?
Yeah, I can't remember his name, but I don't think he's not accepting Dash for sacrifice, is he?
I don't know. No, but I'm just saying so this guy knows the Hex community. He's deeply embedded in Dash, and that's one thing Dash has always been admired for is its treasury.
Yeah.
Well, they were one of the first people to introduce the concept, I think. Yeah. With one of the things that they were spouting at the time, they said, on Bitcoin, it took them X number of months to fight and argue over this particular change to the code, and in Dash, it was done virtually instantaneously because they obviously just had that governance system set up. Sorry, that's separate to the treasury, isn't it? They're separate things.
Are you talking from just the governance side?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're linked or not.
But yeah, I think. So
David said it's Chris Crothers is the chat.
Treasury is more about having the funds to make progress in the
So within that treasury there'd be a governance model. I'm pretty sure Dash is that's why everyone's that's been so successful is they've got a good model there. So it'd be worth having a look at that and seeing if that's something we can apply, and if that's what Rich is sort of indicating we need is something along those lines. But it would make sense to have something that can help drive the protocol forward, where you're not relying on a central person to fund that, because that's obviously a big thing if you want decentralization, is not have someone have to put their hand in their pocket. So you need some way of doing that.
Yeah, I've always been a bit weird about treasuries. For me, it just kind of it sort of does move away from the sort of pure decentralization, because there's always going to be a way to.
So how does the ETH Foundation work?
I guess what I'm saying is, if as soon as there's a system where there's a decision-making process, there's some kind of government on how those funds are going to be spent.
Yep.
Then people can try and start to game how to have a majority of votes, whether it's either by being a whale or by some other mechanism.
Yeah.
Whereas if you don't have that, like Bitcoin doesn't have a treasury and that sort of thing, then you just don't even have to think about whether it's just one less one less threat vector that you have to worry about.
But they've got. So how do they make decisions? And the answer is pretty poorly, because you can see where they are now.
Consensus among network participants.
Yeah, so, which is primarily miners.
Well, miners, nodes, users.
So and a miner's centralized.
You kind of need the whole. I mean, the
nodes are just witnesses. I had this with OG. Nodes don't have any power.
No.
Well. They're important. They're important in the sense that they will be rejecting things that don't meet. If everyone was running a set of nodes, then those nodes dictate what is and isn't legal on the network. So if that node receives something like,
but they don't. They just allow people to scream about it. It's just a witness.
So I guess nodes is possibly a bad example, because everyone can run nodes, like. Users, merchants, miners, they actually all run nodes.
Run a node, yeah.
So like nodes is actually kind of an overarching thing that isn't that's not actually a category of network participants. So I probably shouldn't have listed that, because that's something that every network participant should actually be running. And the consensus is really among miners, users, merchants, and is that it? But I think the
miners are the ones that drive it, and that's why we've seen splits.
The miners, devs, and mining pools and devs, really. That's what it comes to.
But we saw with the No2x, the user activated soft fork, those sorts of battles, and also the attempts to co-opt by Bitcoin Cash, where they had notable personalities within the space who I won't name. They had a lot of miner support by one of the biggest ASIC manufacturers in the world. They had financial resources out the arse, and those three things you would think. So as a Bitcoiner at the time, I was concerned that a lot of people were that was actually a pretty credible threat, and it turned out that was not able to be. That was not enough. Noteworthy personalities, mining hardware, and massive dollars. Those four things all combined was still not enough to co-opt the network. And
they didn't have enough of the mining.
Yeah, the economic energy they were expending by renting miners and everything to try and take over the network wasn't enough. It comes back once again. It comes back down to power. So how much economic power do you have in a system? Which is the way pretty much every bloody system on Earth works. So there's no brilliant way. I don't think anyone's found a brilliant way to do it. The delegated proof of stake stuff seems to be a little bit more democratic. But once again, if a Binance or someone holds those tokens, which we've seen happen on various chains, they just direct those votes to whoever they want to support.
I think fundamentally, it's the game theory is the only thing that can protect you from some of these attack vectors. It's only game theory that holds it together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I think we missed a couple of questions. One was
probably heaps.
about so someone's this was Brizology. He said they realize people are going to FOMO no matter what, so it pays to be first come first serve. That's why the ramp up yet. But so, do you guys have comments on that, Sammy? You've been quiet. And there was another question we missed. I forgot what it was, but if you want to comment on any of those,
Sorry, guys. I know I'm so quiet today because I'm knackered.
Phased out.
I'm listening to, I'm really enjoying what you guys are saying. And Tangent, it's nice to meet you because I've only met you in chat, so it's nice to hear you talk and hear all your info.
Cool. Oh, as long as your quietness is by choice and we're not like crowding you out by being too excited.
Sammy had enough to say yesterday.
Yeah, well, that's it.
You've done a good job, Sammy.
Come back and enjoy. Oh, it's pretty nerve-wracking, but it was fun. I was so excited about it, and Richard he's just lovely, and it was so nice to meet him, and yeah, hopefully I run into him again. But I'm so excited about all this. It's going to be a lot of fun for all of us. But I'll be listening to you guys a lot in chat because you guys really know what you guys are doing. You know way more than me about this whole thing. So
I think we're all learning on the fly because the rules are not set yet. So we're taking, I guess, the knowledge that we do know about the space in general and trying to apply that to how this is going to roll out. But having chats like this and getting everyone bouncing ideas around, that's going to be what comes up with the optimal thing for hexes to do. And I think there's going to be a whole stack of opportunities. So we've just got to, and there's going to be enough opportunity for everyone to have a good crack at this. So I think it's best to work as a group and find out ultimately the first way that we can make hex more successful on it. And we can, on all the hexes that have been here from the start, do really well. But then, have at it and see what we can get in terms of all these additional opportunities and, work as a team to do that.
Yeah. I really enjoyed that. We had a voice chat in our little Telegram, and I was actually driving to the suit fitting that day. And again, I was talking to you guys while I was driving on the way there, and I learned it initiated certain paths of thought that I had just not even considered before in terms of things that will go on with Pulse. So that was incredibly valuable. Some of the stuff we were discussing there. Some of this stuff, maybe sometimes not knowing, so not having everything pinned down. If Richard came out and said, "This is how everything is," boom, 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 boom. This is then it's sort of there's less sort of theory crafting to do. So sometimes those unknowns make it more fun for the discussion.
Yeah. So, and if you're not in Pulse chat, which I'm sure most people are that are watching us, get in there because we've actually got a chance to. Things are still fluid. There's a lot. There's a lot that is set, but there's
actually.
Yeah, and it's good. In Hex chat, we don't really talk about other projects, but in Pulse chat, there's a bit more freedom and there where we can express things and throw around good ideas. So get in there and have a chat if you've got an idea sitting around in the back of your head, voice it because this is the chance to do it.
I just want to answer one question. I know so many questions came up that we've missed, but there was one by Hexy Babe that said, "What's the difference between nodes and validators?" That's just terminology. So nodes on the Bitcoin network, they call it nodes, and the nodes validate the transactions. And on validators is a term. And Richard covered this in the stream with Sammy actually, that some of these words are just on different chains. They just use different terminology, but it's all the same thing. So nodes and validators are really the same thing. But I think maybe validators gets used more on proof of stake chains and nodes more on proof of work. The examples that Richard gave were, DPoS, delegated proof of stake, is the same as X, is the same as Y, is the same. There were various things.
Authority.
Proof of authority. Yeah, I hadn't actually. I think there was actually a project that they called the project Proof of Authority. So I didn't realize that had already also been taken and used as sometimes sometimes this stuff can be confusing, and I think some projects do it deliberately. You know, there's a top 10 project that I won't name that I've always had a distaste for, with a very aggressive community that they stole a lot of terminology from Bitcoin, and then they used it in their fake ass project that's not real crypto, in my opinion. But they used the terminology so it made it. You're like, oh yeah, this project's got nodes, and this project's got this, and this project got that. But what they've called a node is actually not a node, and what they've called this is, you know, certain things, certain aspects of the project, they've just stolen the terminology but not actually rolled it out correctly. 2 million hex divided up by 7.
What he's thinking there is DCAing over the first week. If all
we covered that
in terms of the curve, but then if you think
we
the hex
go
up, maybe you DCA in over that. Yeah, it's not a bad.
I think that's worthy. I think that's worthy as an idea. I think you know, look, you know how I said there's these unknown variables. One of the things we do know is that the early group will get a benefit over the others that is not luck. That's a bonus that is guaranteed. So for me personally, if I was going to do this idea of DCAing across those groups, I probably still would weight more heavily towards the starter group. Because those other factors, like what the US dollar price is, you don't actually have control or predictability on that. So I would maybe go heavier, and then slightly less, and tail it out.
If you're in the first group, as opposed to the tail end after 30 days or whatever it is, that's a 3x difference, 3.3x difference or something like that. So that's a significant amount.
That's big. That's actually quite big.
So you need.
I was saying that you would need the price to triple for you to be.
You need your economic value that you're putting in there to be 3 times as much.
And what will happen is everyone will go, oh, fuck it, I'll put it in the first thing, and then it goes up by 10x.
It's crypto. It's crypto, and we are in an aggressive bull market, so that is possible. However, I think, you know, even with some pumps we've seen lately, I think you'd struggle to find projects that have 3x'd within a month, especially with these big cap projects. Look at the list, right? Doge, Link. These are big cap projects. For them to do a 3x is actually in a month. That's quite significant. But look, it's crypto. It's crypto. You're right. It could do 10x's are very possible. Look at. Actually, I don't want to list specific projects, but there are projects that have surprised me that they have done massive X's. You know, I used to be, before Hex, I used to be more of a micro cap gem hunter. And while I would have a spread of all the different cap categories, my real focus in terms of my time, research, and economic energy used to be in micro caps, because they just had the biggest pump potential. And some of these large cap projects lately have done massive gains. Massive gains.
Yep. So we've got, there's a whole raft of questions that have.
What do we think about the timing? Like, I was very surprised when he said a week or two. It might sacrifice period might start in a week or two.
Yeah, but that's. I think we discussed.
I'm pumped for that. I'm ready.
I know there are some people that are a bit pissed at that, because they're like, I want to go in big, but I need more time to organise.
Yeah. So I think we spoke about this in our little chat. We're saying that can run. So the work can run in parallel. So you can be running your sacrifice period while they're still sorting everything out, which is obviously what their intention is. But even after that 30-day sacrifice period, that doesn't mean the chain bang is going to launch. You can sit there and that can be held for. But
I think Blue Bum's talking about people who wanted to get their finances
funds,
going into the sacrifice.
I sell their house.
I want to drop my opinion on this, right? Say it was he said a week. I think he was basically saying a week to 2 weeks would be the soonest, right? Let's be crazy and say that starts in 1 week, and then that first bucket goes for another week, so that you could be coming in on the tail end of that and still be getting the same deal as everyone that's within that group. That is 2 full weeks to get
Sort
your
your shit
shit
out.
together. And 2 weeks in crypto is like freaking 2 years in legacy. So you I know for some people, say even if you got paid fortnightly, you're going to have a pay period within that before that end of that zone that you want to get in on. I think I'm for Pulse. I want everything ASAP. I want everything as soon as possible. Just get it because we don't know how long this bull market.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Go,
Hey guys,
Sorry. Yep.
sorry, tangent.
No, that's fine.
I just want to ask a question. So you know how we're sacrificing our coins for X? Is the X automatically going to Pulse, or do we still got to do that part of it? Still buy?
I think you'll be.
He's erring. He's erring on doing on you having to do something, like you having to your new Pulse tokens from X, because that means is that you're doing the work.
You've done the work, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not going to automatically. So because we're in early, automatically that sacrificed coins will just go straight to Pulse, and then whoever else can just get in.
Okay, if you look at the way EOS done theirs, did you actually give up the EOS ERC20s? I can't recall that now, whether I've still got some of those sitting in my wallet or mainnet. Yeah. Did you actually get rid of the tokens? Because I've had other instances where you don't actually. I'm pretty sure I've still got some EOS tokens sitting in one of my wallets. Where
don't quote me on this, but I think they did a token swap. However, for me, I think mine were on an exchange, so they just did it for me. Like if sometimes when you ship,
I know you had to go and register an address and all that kind of stuff, but I don't know if they actually removed the tokens, the ERC20s from your wallet. I don't think you sent them anywhere. I think they just looked at the balance and then gave you the EOS mainnet coins.
I don't know if this is actually directly relevant to the question you asked, Sammy, but you've just reminded me something I thought of this morning. It's a privacy concern, and I know Richard cares about privacy. Look at how well the Hex thing went, where people are like, oh, what about we're claiming? And Richard was very clear. He said, look, the only privacy concern with Hex is if you're claiming multiple Bitcoin addresses to one ETH address, then someone could come along later and look and go, all of those all of those Bitcoin addresses are likely owned by the same person, right? As a thing. With this, there may I would want Richard's comment on this, so don't quote, like don't take this as godlike, but because people might be contributing coins from multiple chains, just be aware there's a potential privacy threat vector that you know how normally people can do chain analysis within one chain, but it's pretty difficult to go cross-chain and work out, people might know what I've done on Bitcoin, but they might not be able to link me to my like Dogecoin or my Litecoin or whatever. There's potential here that depending on how the setup is for this sacrificing thing, if it's all in one interface and you're like, hey, this is my ETH address or what's going to be my equivalent ETH address on the Pulse chain, and then I'm sacrificing coins, that might actually start to create a picture of what addresses across multiple chains. So be aware of that and maybe use fresh addresses or whatever you need to do so that or listen to Richard on what he says is the safest way to do it so that you're not doxing yourself cross-chain. Or the simple way to do it so you don't have to stress about it would be just pick one coin maybe that you sell everything into, like if you were to sell everything into Hex and then you just contribute Hex and then there's like that sort of stuff is really complex.
Yeah, and just to address David's statements, I think that Richard hasn't decided whether he just gets a list and then airdrops them later, or if we have to actually go and do a minting. I think he liked the minting idea because we have to do some sort of work. But what do you guys reckon about this? Like, I don't know about emergency ending a stake together.
I'd be leaving it till the very last minute before you need to.
Sorry, I think I've got a direct answer for Sammy's question. If you use oracles, you might be able to do it auto. If you had it, I think Richard actually, did he make that comment where he said, if you've got an oracle that you can trust, like if you've got an oracle that you trust with reasonable level of trust that you trust, then you could actually automate it, right? Because it sees the Dogecoin coming into the into the burn address, and then it just uses the oracle to work out what the USD price would be, and then just mints the amount of Pulse on the new chain.
Yeah,
Something like that.
Well, you are going to have to rely on something to pull in the USD value.
Yes. So it either needs to be manual or it needs to be oracle. Yeah.
Yeah. David mentioned something in chat, and I hadn't thought about this.
Yep.
There is no X actually. Just sacrificing gets you on the list.
Yeah, he doesn't know that we haven't. The details we don't know yet.
Yeah.
But essentially, like that, what he's saying is that the Richard Hart is just using X as a concept rather than
yeah. And I hadn't thought about that, but it may actually be. You may be right. There may not be I'd have to think about that a bit more. I'm just wondering whether technically you'd still need to have something that you can.
No, he could airdrop it if you sacrifice by giving it an address. Then he has a list of that address.
Yeah, but if you don't, that does actually make a bit of sense, because if you don't actually trade into something, swap into something, there's no taxable event, is there?
Wait, Sammy has to go, so we'll let her say goodbye.
I'd love to stay, but I got to go do some mum stuff.
Yeah, and get some sleep as well.
Thanks for coming on.
I will. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, really good to see you. And once again, congratulations on that stream with Richard. That was awesome.
Thanks so much, and it was lovely to meet you. I hope to catch you in chat soon.
Yeah, you too.
All right, take care, guys. Have a good one.
Sammy.
Bye.
Yeah, I hadn't actually thought about what David said, but that could actually make sense. If you don't buy anything, you don't trade into anything, then
that's the whole purpose of having a taxable event. Yeah.
So I don't know how you technically then manage the swaps and all that sort of stuff, or the airdrops, but
are you guys saying that then you can't do it? What I was saying with the oracles, where it's all auto, because then it's linked to that you're putting this in and you're getting this out.
No. So you can use your oracle. So you send to an address. So you give something to an address, but you don't ever get anything in return. So you don't get an ERC20 token in return for that.
Yep.
It just is a registration of, okay, I sent this amount into this burn address, and we know at this point in time it was worth this much US dollars, which that's all pulled from whether it's Etherscan or where they get Infura or where they get it all from.
So you get that line item.
But you don't actually get anything. You've just got a placeholder that says I've deposited this much USD. So then you haven't done a trade or anything, and then you're getting given something for free on the Pulse chain that equates to however much economic energy you put in there. So there's no real link about what you've been given there. You haven't actually, you couldn't enter that into somewhere as an exchange or anything. It's literally, by its very definition, it's been sacrificed. You've just burnt it.
Yeah. I think this would be one for the lawyers, wouldn't it? That it once sort of someone could argue that, someone could argue reasonably that you, I'm not sure. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. That's
because I've always been thinking, okay, if you did get X, it is a taxable event, even though it's zero, it's worth zero.
It's actually a loss.
Actually, you know what? That's actually an interesting one.
No, it's a loss and it starts off at zero, but then as it gains value, then once you realize that capital gains, then it becomes, that's when you have to pay.
That's incorrect. If you sell ETH, so if you buy ETH for $1 and then you sell it for $2, even if you sell it into something worth zero. So if it's
$2 if you're selling into zero.
No, because ETH has a value. So if ETH is worth $1 when you purchased it, and then it goes up to $2, and then you sell it at $2, even if the thing you get given on the end is worth zero, you've sold it when it's worth $2.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, yes.
So that's your gain.
Tax perspective.
No, if you sell it for zero, it's worth zero.
No. It's like it's so the dollar value. So in your tax jurisdiction, the dollar value when you dispose of it, it doesn't matter if you like gave it away or bought something say you just went and bought a cat or something like that that doesn't even have a value, you just went and used it to buy something, that's the capital gains tax would be paid on the value of the asset that you are disposing, not the item that you are receiving for disposing it.
So if you give it away for free, isn't that?
Yeah, even if you gave it away.
So look at this. So when you pay, this is the stupidity of this. So when you pay your ETH fees, that's a taxable event.
Oh shit, I never thought of that. Oh fuck.
Yeah. So when you actually go look in all
wait.
Wait. Then you get a tax deduction.
You get because you get a
deduction for that offsets it fully, like because you've spent that.
You're offsetting it off the capital gains, not off the you spent it.
But I think you can actually.
That doesn't make any sense at all.
You go look at all of the software that tracks all your coin movements, and you make profit when you pay fees.
Yeah, that actually sounds legit. By the way, Bluebum, my tax accountant said to me once that he said the tax code is not fair. And it's not fair and it's not logical. You need to always keep that in the back of your mind. It's just like, these are the rules, and we just have to play by these rules to stay legal. And sometimes it defies logic. It's unfair, and you just have to accept that. But that actually sounds legit. That because the ETH is worth that much when you're paying the gas fee, this is assuming that the ETH when you bought it was worth,
realizing the capital
and it's gone up.
And
now you're disposing of that asset. It doesn't actually matter what you're doing with it. The disposal of that asset, there's a capital gain from where you bought it, from the price you bought it at to the price you're selling it to, the disposed.
So if you never dispose of it,
if you never dispose of the asset, then you never pay tax, or not cap gains anyway.
Yeah.
Unless they bring in this ridiculous wealth tax that they're talking about, that they can actually tax unrealized profits, which is insane, and absolutely insane. And hopefully it will never pass. But
no, it would never get up.
That's interesting. Because I think about tax implications quite a bit, and I never thought about that aspect of paying ETH fees. There's I haven't used this product, so I'm not endorsing it, but I've been told by an influencer that I like, and I follow his shit, that but he's obviously in the US, so I don't know how well this would port across to Australia. But there's a product called Token Tax, where you just put your ETH address in, or at least the ones that you want to dox yourself to the government on. So if there's one that you legitimately want to do the right thing on that particular ETH address, you pump that address into Token Tax. I believe it's a paid service though, and they actually have taken the time to think about all of these nuanced cases like farming and flash loans and freaking fees and all of these weird and wonderful things, rebase tokens that change the freaking amount of coins in your wallet, like behind the scenes while you sleep, and all of these weird and wonderful things that are a nightmare for a legacy tax accountant to go through. And this guy said that it works really well and saved him a lot of headache, because this was the type of guy who just went deep and just started trying all these different he just wanted to experiment with all these different things, and farm and yield and freaking automated this and everything. So I'm personally thinking about checking that out, that Token Tax.
Yeah, you got another one. You also Jexa, don't you?
It's part of my day job. We've used a couple of tools. We use Coinly and Coin Tracking, which they're not. There's no silver bullet in this space, and everything moves so fast that it's hard to keep tabs on it. And if we know what's going on and we can't keep tabs on it, what bloody hope is the tax office got?
I've used Coin Tracking. My personal experience was that it just broke on so many things for me, and that was before DeFi. So I was using Coin Tracking back in like 2016-ish, and I just found the amount of manual corrections. So
they're all the same like that.
Dragging in API data from like multiple exchanges, and I'll admit I was on a lot of different exchanges, but the amount of things that would break, and suddenly it would say that my account balance is like $4 $40 million. And I'm like, what's going on?
No, it still does that.
It still does, yeah, and it still does, yeah. So you're constant. And the one thing I will say that's positive is the support was insane. So I considered myself to be sort of a very early user. So I was contacting support saying, look, this is breaking for me. And they were on that. They were very, very helpful to try and fix it. But the fact still remains that if it's breaking every freaking day and you're having to manually adjust all of these things to try and fix it, then it's no good if you're going to go large and go diverse in crypto. You want something that's basically almost fully, like maybe the odd correction here and there, but not just having to constantly fix things. So this Coinly one looks good. I haven't seen that. I haven't used that before. And it actually says it's, I like the ones that are tax focused, that rather than ones that were originally developed as more of just like a portfolio tracker, and then they've added tax as an afterthought. The one, I think I used one called, I'll try and find it. It was like crypto tax or something.
So you're correct about coin tracking and those issues. Coinly is a lot better.
Awesome.
And it's a new company, so they're using newer tech. It's a little bit slower in the way it calculates everything, but it's a lot more set and forget.
Awesome.
But everything requires a little bit of beating into shape.
The one that I use, I think it's called Crypto Tax Calculator. I'm trying to find it. It is, wrong browser. It was really good because they actually are Australian tax focused.
Oh yeah. So just answering your question while he's doing that.
Yeah.
I don't know if there is. I don't think you need to play GST. But normally,
getting a bit of feedback there, guys. I don't know.
Yeah. What I've done is that, like, the people who I go through my Australian, like exchange that I go through from Australian dollars to crypto, they just send me a statement, like at the. Well, you can download their statement, and I just use that.
So they just go here, like here's the.
It's what you've bought.
The data that's critical for your tax return. Here's what your.
And that's the one. And they're the ones that are hooked up to the ATO, and like really, that's what the ATO is going to be checking against.
Yeah,
I think the
problem comes in when you start to use multiple exchanges, and if they're crypto to crypto. And then depending on your jurisdiction, how they handle that stuff. So like we were talking before, I believe that in Australia, if you sell crypto to crypto, that is a taxable event in terms of the gain that you've made on so if you buy BTC, it goes up and then you use that BTC to buy some other thing like ETH, you are meant to be paying cap gains or losses on that Bitcoin appreciation. And then if it gets complex as you start to do more and more trades, there's some aspects of the tax where you get a choice on how you account for it, like first in, first out, last in, last out, those sorts of things. So there's some things where you get to choose how you account for it, and that could actually be beneficial to your situation. So it's nice of them to do that and provide that sort of like simplified statement, but there's potential that what they've provided to you might not actually be tax optimized, depending on how they've calculated, and depending on the complexity of what you've done. If you've literally only just bought and sold Bitcoin against Australian dollars, then it's probably pretty easy for them to. And even then, it actually matters. It matters whether. Are you saying the very first Bitcoin that you ever bought, is that the one that you sold today? Or is it the one that you just bought yesterday that you're selling today? And that's your choice, but then you have to be consistent moving forward. So you can't, so you have to obviously have consistency. You can't in this tax year choose some accounting method that benefits you and is tax optimized to get your cap gains as low as possible this year, and then go, next year I'm going to do it differently. So because obviously then there's a potential that you're actually gapping the tax that should be paid. So once you choose a method, you kind of have to stick to that method, or at least do a calculation in that when you transfer over to another method. So it's a bit like if you run a business, you can choose to do cash accounting or accrual accounting, but you have to be consistent with that method. And if at some point in the future you want to switch methods, you need to kind of like account for that changeover period and make sure that you're paying the correct tax in total. Like, so as long as you can demonstrate that you paid the correct amount globally as well as locally, then it's fine.
Yeah.
So sorry. The one it's called.
It's all about capital gains, not about GST.
Yeah. Sorry. One final comment on tax, and then we'll get off it because it's boring as batshit, isn't it?
Yeah.
sorry. I actually get excited.
Yeah.
So is that it, do you reckon? Like, it looks like, well, I just put up here that, like, Gunter just noticed that the God Whale has bought another 5.7. What an interesting amount. Like, maybe that's a dollar amount, I imagine, hey? That's probably like...
no, it says Hex brought 5 million Hex.
That's like, is that 100 grand?
It's 2.05 cents at the moment. Let's just say 2 cents. So what did you say? 5 million?
5.7 mil.
That's 100 grand, is it? Yeah.
So what? No, in Hex minute. So what would be great? So just circling back to we talked about
I'm getting 285 grand.
Oh, that much is it? I was doing it in my head, so it's probably wrong. Yeah.
I didn't even try.
Yeah, even
116 grand.
Genius galaxy brain Richard Hart does not do mental arithmetic on stream. I remember him saying that it's a recipe to look like a dumbass because it's so easy to just fuck up a
Oh, look, I was wrong. I was pretty close. 116 grand.
Okay. I must have done the math wrong. I'm getting 285 grand. If it was 5.7 mil times 2 cents, is that?
Yep.
Shit. Sorry, guys. I did divide by. God damn. This is why we don't do math on stream. But yeah, look, the Hex price is actually approaching all-time high in dollar value. So it's punching up. So all-time high, if we look at a wick, it was 2.5 cents. But if we look at like a daily candle close, which is probably more realistic, it was actually 2.2 cents. And we're basically pushing up on that. We're 2.06 cents at the moment. And the speed at which it's rising is...
It's pretty insane, isn't it?
So yeah.
So it's funny because so before all of this happened, we're all looking at all the TA, and there's a few of the guys in the community, myself included, that all have their theories. And even before this new pumpermental was introduced, we're all pretty positive about where it was all going to head. So this is just going to be crazy, I think.
It's great because it did slow down with the gas fees. Like it just.
Well, I think in terms of onboarding newer users, it was hard. Like everyone just wants to chuck in a few $100 to try it out, and it's when you're losing half of that in gas fees and stuff, it's not great.
Well, it definitely slowed the price down, I think.
Yeah, I think, but it was due for a pullback. Like we had a good run up, so it was technically it was doing what it needed to do. Just Gunther, it'd be good if we could get a take on. So we mentioned about the liability side of things. I'm not sure whether you've got like a risk rating on those accounts as to are they
risk rating?
no, as in like if you peered into their account, do they have a heap of stakes or are they
trading they've done or something?
Yeah, so if you can find out whether they're likely to be sellers as opposed to long term.
Like if they've done more than 20 trades.
Well, yeah, if they've done something, like if you can tell, you can see whether they've got stakes out for 15 years or something like that.
For people that don't know, Gunter was the guy that did an audit of the OA, and there's a whole episode from last week where he came on and talked about it all. So go and check that out if you're interested. And yeah, he's a good friend of the show now.
Yeah, I don't know whether you applied any logic when you were looking at that. Yeah, get him on. Yeah.
This will be interesting.
You see Gunther's message?
No. Oh, invite to the stream. Yeah, you want to come on now, Gunter? I mean, I was actually thinking of like ending it about there. We've been on 3 hours. Are you guys really keen to keep going, or?
If he's going to jump on, let him get on for Get
I
on
just
for half
want
an
to
hour
super
more.
quickly mention that tax calculator that I found that I think is quite good. That if you guys want to check it out, it's all in one word. It's cryptotaxcalculator.io/AU. So, and that's an Australian focused. They don't do that thing that I was talking about where you can just put an ETH address in and it does all your DeFi stuff, but you can the API all your exchanges. And one thing that I really liked about it when I used it is it gives, so rather than say there's something that it doesn't know what happened because it kind of almost needs manual input from you to say what the event was, it will at least take a guess and then it'll highlight those and be like, look, this is the stuff that you need to input on, but we've kind of done a best guess on what it is. So if you also can't remember, then I guess you might as well just go, okay, I guess like your guess is as good as mine. Like, so do you know what I mean? So then it always pumps out an actual result at the end. It doesn't ever leave you with this unknown, oh, this stuff's unknown. You need to sort that out before we can give you a result. So
guys, we have, he used to be Gunter von Hopium.
Yeah.
Now changed his name to Gunter the Accountant.
How appropriate for what we've just been talking about.
You guys like the name change?
Hey, man.
How are you, bud?
All right. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, good, loud and clear.
Great.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I changed the name.
So
I thought it was more fitting.
It's good. So it's these people you've got marked as liabilities. How much digging did you do into
people? What that?
Sorry,
means?
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I recently posted like an updated like spreadsheet. You could find it in the main chat or Hex Trading or Hex Bear, and I actually defined like all the major terms. So anyone's a liability if they hold liquid tokens. And then what I did was I kind of ignored, just for sake of time, I kind of ignored all the addresses that have less than 1 million hex tokens. Eventually I will bring them into the spreadsheet, but we're still trying to figure out, me and Crispy are working on this. We're still trying to figure out an efficient way to do that. But basically anyone that has less than 1 million hex tokens is classified as an other liability in the spreadsheet. And anyone else that has 1 million or more is classified as either a high-risk liability or a low-risk liability. The high-risk liabilities are the ones we basically recently created a script to run through Excel where it automatically checks the balances of each address. So we click a button, it'll update the balance, and we have a column that says previous balance and then available balance. So if someone's available balance is greater than or equal to the previous balance, then they're classified as a low risk because they're either holding or buying. They're increasing their position in Hex.
Yeah.
Yep. And then all the other high risk liabilities is anyone that has an available balance that's less than the previous balance, which means they're selling.
Yep. And do you take into account whether they've got stakes or not?
Not at this point.
Yep.
I mean, already just to get to this point, it's a lot,
Oh yeah,
So,
you've done a cracking job, mate.
Down the road.
Yeah.
Oh,
The amount
thanks.
of effort you've put into that is superb. So well done.
Oh yeah, I appreciate it. I've gotten a lot of help from Crispy Man. He's been helping me out, just writing up code for me to make the job more efficient, in Excel. So.
Yep. You're a legend.
Anyway.
Doing good work. So that's good.
Thanks.
So my question wasn't so silly then. We have applied a little bit of a risk rating to these.
Yeah. Now keep in mind, this is just a preliminary risk assessment. You could go much deeper into this, based on average stake length, T-shares, how often do they sell, how much do they sell. There's a lot of variables that you could introduce or a lot of risk factors to be able to come up with a more, I guess, like a better risk assessment. But this is at least gives us a starting point. And if you look at this, the spreadsheet, you'll find that right now there's at the very most, 2.1 billion liquid hex that would be like a major like liability for the price, meaning that's the sum of all high risk liability addresses plus all other addresses that have 1 million tokens or less, which have not even been analyzed. We just assume, and this is assuming that each one of these addresses sold 100% of their position, which is from a probability standpoint, like basically impossible.
Yep.
For those not aware, what we're talking about, I'll pull it up here. Gunter is just like, well, do you want to explain what you've done, Gunter? Like to people who are not aware of what you've done?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I started originally with just an audit of the origin addresses, all the addresses that the origin address sent money to. And then I also found all the addresses that had basically the behavior of the origin address or controlling entity in hex, where they essentially entered the lobby in the early days of the transform lobby. They entered with Ethereum or whatever, minted their hex, staked it right before big payday, ended the stake, and then they just hold fat stacks of liquid hex tokens in dormant wallets where the hex has never been sold or transferred. But then it's kind of, after doing that audit, it's kind of the spreadsheet's actually evolving into something way beyond the origin address. It's now able to like consider what's actually in circulation, like what is a more accurate figure for like actual sell pressure. And that's been determined to be 26 billion as a maximum number. But actually, if you start going deeper and analyze it further, it's really going to be less than like 2 billion tokens, pretty much.
Yeah. Awesome. I'll chuck that in the chat as well.
Cool. Now, look forward to seeing that evolve over time, and it's good to have useful information like that.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting me on. I appreciate it. I figured it'd be easier to explain rather than try to type it all through chat.
Yes. Yeah, cool.
All right.
Thank you heaps. Yeah. Well, do you guys want to keep going, or should we just?
No, I'm going to head off anyway. So yeah, I think we've covered a fair bit of ground. I think there's going to be a lot more to cover.
I think we did amazing. I think we covered a lot of interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's already over 3 hours, so this.
Yeah. So thanks for everyone in the chat for contributing.
Yeah, you guys were going for quite a while before I even arrived. So
any other Aussie Hexicans like Hexy Babe, if you want to come on, just to the stream sometime and have a chat with us, and meet the other Aussie crews or whatever. Just send us a message, and thanks everyone for being in the chat. There's heaps of people. It's really great to see it growing. And thanks Hex TA, thanks to Sammy, thanks Jexa, thanks Gunter. You guys are all awesome. I haven't been able to load video, so I haven't really got a video to go out on, unfortunately. So
that's all right.
We're going to have a big.
That's cool.
Just put the hex chart up.
We should just put the hex price chart on the hex price. Yeah. Before we go, the hex price is doing really well.
It's doing really well, guys.
Really good, and
you guys haven't seen anything yet with the hex price. It's going
to look at that. That's a beautiful site.
Go to $1.
Looking very nice.
That is awesome.
Everyone, see you later. Thanks.
Bye, guys.
See you guys later.
See you guys.
Bye.